Long before the pyramids thrust their monumental shapes into the clear Egyptian sky, the land of the Nile was already shaping the destiny of a great civilization. The river, winding like a timeless thread through a sunburnt expanse of desert and fertile floodplain, was the heart of life for early Egyptian communities. Its annual flood, depositing a rich silt across the plains, begot abundance out of arid soil, and its waters carried both people and ideas, uniting far-flung settlements along its banks. In these early days, long before grand stone structures, simple mud-brick tombs and humble mastabas dotted the landscape, marking the places of burial for the noble and powerful. Egypt's geography was at once a challenge and a blessing. Vast deserts lay at its edges, but the Nile's fertile ribbon offered sustenance, transportation, and a sense of order. The predictable flooding of the river created a cyclical calendar that shaped how people lived, farmed, and worshipped. The stars, too, guided them. In the clear desert night, ancient Egyptians charted the sky and wove its rhythms into their beliefs. It was this potent mixture of land, water, sky, and human ambition that nurtured the idea of building not merely for the living, but for eternity. The pyramid, then, is not just a tomb. It is a profound statement, a physical manifestation of power, belief, and cosmic order. For the pharaoh, regarded as both king and a divine being, the pyramid was a bridge, a stairway of stone that linked the earthly realm with the heavens. It was a vessel for immortality, a reservoir for divine connection, and a declaration of authority that would remain visible for millennia. But to understand how these monumental structures came to be, one must travel back to a time when architecture, religion, and society were in their formative stages. In pre-dynastic Egypt, as villages began to cluster along the Nile and hierarchies of power emerged, burial practices evolved. The dead were honored, their memory preserved, and their journey beyond life carefully imagined. Early tombs consisted of simple pits or shallow chambers, often reinforced with reed mats or timber. Over time, as social complexity grew, so did the ambition to commemorate rulers with more permanent structures. The mastaba, a flat-roofed, rectangular building made of mud brick, became the favored tomb for elite individuals. These early forms established essential ideas. The body of the ruler was to be preserved. Offerings would ensure his sustenance in the afterlife, and the tomb itself would serve as a focal point of religious devotion. The breakthrough came in the Third Dynasty, under the visionary architect Imhotep, engineer to Pharaoh Djoser. Imhotep conceived a radical innovation. Instead of a single-level mastaba, he designed a series of stacked mastabas, creating a stepped pyramid. This structure at Saqqara marked the first large-scale stone construction in Egyptian history and symbolized a profound shift. The use of stone rather than mud brick signaled permanence. The step pyramid form reached upward, a visual metaphor for ascent toward the divine. And within this structure, corridors, chambers, and courtyards were arranged to serve both practical funerary functions and spiritual purposes. Imhotep's creation did more than innovate architecturally. It galvanized the state, demonstrating centralized power, organized labor, and religious unity. The building of the step pyramid required extensive planning, a workforce skilled in quarrying and masonry, and a logistical system to supply stone, food, and water. For the first time, laborers organized into crews, masons, haulers, carpenters, and support staff worked together under the direction of foremen and administrators. Provisioning these workers, coordinating their efforts, and ensuring their well-being became a monumental administrative feat. Over the decades, this innovation seeded a new ambition. Rulers who followed saw in Imhotep's work not just a tomb, but a prototype for divine ascension and eternal legacy. They imagined pyramids that would surpass the step pyramid in scale, in purity of form, and in symbolic power. With that vision, the smooth-sided pyramid was born. No longer merely a stepped structure, the new pyramids would present an unbroken face of limestone to the desert sky, their surfaces catching the sun's rays in a constant brilliant gleam, symbolizing a direct communion between the pharaoh, the sun god Ra, and the heavens. But the realization of that vision would not come easily. Building a pyramid of truly monumental scale required more than faith and ambition. It demanded extraordinary engineering. Pharaohs such as Sneferu experimented with design, building pyramids of varying slope and structure to learn how to control weight, stress, and balance. Meanwhile, architects, laborers, and administrators developed systems to quarry stone, transport massive blocks, and coordinate teams of thousands over decades. At the heart of this enterprise was a deeply held religious belief: death was not the end. The Egyptians believed in an afterlife, a place where the pharaoh's spirit would need a body, sustenance, and a throne. Mummification preserved the body, while tomb goods, furniture, vessels, food, and symbolic items provided for the needs of eternity. Priests conducted sacred rituals, inscribed texts in hieroglyphs, and placed spells on the walls, guiding the pharaoh's spirit and linking his tune to both cosmic and religious order. Yet pyramids were not built in isolation. Around them grew communities of workers, men and women, artisans and laborers, living, working, and believing together. Their villages contained bakeries and breweries, dormitories, workshops, and medical facilities. Their lives were shaped by the Nile's floods, the rhythm of the seasons, and the demands of the monumental project. Their work, in turn, structured the state. Construction became a force for social cohesion, economic planning, and political control. In the centuries that followed, pyramid building reached its zenith. Pharaohs like Khufu commissioned the greatest of all pyramids, not just a tomb, but a symbol that would endure beyond generations, beyond kingdoms, beyond time itself. Yet even the greatest ambitions eventually shifted. As the old kingdom waned, economic strains, political decentralization, and changing religious practices reduced the scale of pyramid construction. Later dynasties built smaller pyramids or turned to valleys and hidden tombs, and the age of monumental pyramids entered its decline. Still, the legacy remained. The pyramids stood through millennia as silent guardians of Egypt's glory. Rediscovered by modern explorers, studied by archaeologists, and preserved as UNESCO World Heritage, they continue to captivate the world. They teach us not only about the technical skill of the ancients, but about their worldview, how they saw life, death, divinity, and the universe. This is, in essence, the story we will tell, a history not of myth, but of people, labor, belief, and stone. A narrative of how ancient Egyptians built for eternity, and in doing so, shaped a civilization that still echoes across the sands and through time. Following the pioneering construction of Djoser's step pyramid at Saqqara, the trajectory of pyramid building entered a period of intense experimentation and refinement. The pharaoh Sneferu of the 4th dynasty is widely recognized as the master of this transformative era. Sneferu undertook multiple pyramid projects, each representing a learning phase in both architecture and engineering. His first, the Medum pyramid, began as a step structure but was later converted to a smooth-sided form. Though unfinished and partially collapsed over time, it served as a critical lesson in load distribution, slope calculation, and structural integrity. Next, Sneferu commissioned the bent pyramid at Dashur. The unusual change in slope midway up the structure gives it a distinctive profile, which scholars interpret as a response to structural stress. Engineers of the time likely observed that a steeper angle in the initial section was causing instability and adjusted the slope to prevent collapse. This pyramid illustrates the Egyptians' sophisticated understanding of geometry and physical forces, even without formalized mathematics as we know it today. The bent pyramid was complemented by the red pyramid, also at Dashur, which is considered the first successful smooth-sided pyramid. Its uniform angle, estimated at around 43 degrees, provided the structural stability required for future constructions. The red pyramid represents the culmination of decades of trial, adjustment, and accumulated knowledge. Throughout this period, quarrying methods became increasingly standardized. Limestone was the primary material sourced from nearby quarries, while granite for interior chambers and sarcophagi was transported from Aswan, more than 800 kilometers to the south. Workers used copper chisels, wooden mallets, and stone tools to extract blocks, and simple yet effective transport techniques such as sledges over lubricated sand allowed for movement across the desert terrain. Water poured on sand reduced friction, as evidenced by wall reliefs and modern experimental archaeology. Large crews coordinated the movement of stones, lifting and positioning them precisely to create the smooth-faced pyramids that came to define the Old Kingdom. Labor organization was hierarchical and meticulous. Permanent skilled artisans handled the carving of stones, the construction of internal chambers, and the precision placement of casing blocks. Seasonal laborers, often recruited from agricultural communities during the Nile's inundation, augmented the workforce when farming was temporarily impossible. Foremen and supervisors oversaw teams divided into gangs, responsible for specific tasks, with scribes documenting hours, rations, and progress. Archaeological evidence from worker villages, including dormitories, bakeries, breweries, and medical facilities, indicates that the state carefully maintained the health and productivity of its labor force. The religious and symbolic significance of these pyramids cannot be overstated. Pharaohs were regarded as divine beings, intermediaries between the gods and the people. The pyramid itself was conceived as a stairway for the pharaoh's soul, a means to ascend to the heavens and join the gods. Orientation was carefully calculated. Pyramids were aligned to the cardinal points, and internal shafts were often directed toward specific stars, particularly those associated with the afterlife. Rituals were conducted throughout construction, and the placement of funerary goods, from furniture and vessels to jewelry and food, ensured the pharaoh's sustenance in the afterlife. Walls adorned with hieroglyphs and reliefs further reinforced these beliefs, providing both guidance and protection for the deceased ruler. By the time of Khufu, Sneferu's son, the lessons of earlier pyramids were consolidated into the most ambitious project in Egyptian history, the Great Pyramid at Giza, constructed over an estimated 20-year period. It consists of roughly 2.3 million limestone blocks, with an average weight of 2.3 to 2.5 metric tons per block. Some granite stones, especially in the King's Chamber, weigh over 50 tons. Transported from quarries across the Nile, these stones were moved using sledges, rollers, and ramps, placed with extraordinary precision. The Great Pyramid's internal design is equally remarkable. The King's Chamber, the Queen's Chamber, and the Grand Gallery demonstrate advanced understanding of load distribution, with relieving chambers above the King's Chamber to prevent collapse. The pyramid was aligned with incredible accuracy to the cardinal points, demonstrating the Egyptians' mastery of surveying and astronomy. Surrounding the pyramid were smaller pyramids for queens, mortuary temples, causeways, and satellite structures, forming a complex that integrated construction, ritual, and state administration into a coherent whole. Every aspect of pyramid building reflected a sophisticated blend of engineering, organization, and religious purpose. Seasonal labor, careful provisioning of food and tools, and oversight of work ensured that massive construction projects could proceed efficiently over decades. Priests conducted rituals to bless the site and protect the pharaoh, while scribes maintained meticulous records. Worker villages provided shelter, food, medical care, and workshops for artisans. All these elements combined to create not just a tomb, but a lasting testament to the power, skill, and beliefs of ancient Egypt. As the Fourth Dynasty continued, Khafre and Menkaure built their own pyramids at Giza. Khafre's pyramid is slightly smaller than Khufu's, but retains the precision and grandeur of the earlier structure, including the associated sphinx and complex of temples. Menkaure's pyramid, smaller still, demonstrates adaptations in scale and resource allocation, reflecting changes in political and economic circumstances. Each pyramid, while unique, follows the foundational principles established by Djoser, Sneferu, and Khufu: precise alignment, durable materials, internal chambers, ritual significance, and integration into a broader complex that served both practical and spiritual purposes. After the monumental achievements of the Fourth Dynasty, pyramid construction gradually shifted in both scale and style. By the time of the Fifth and Sixth Dynasties, pyramids continued to serve as tombs for pharaohs, but the grandeur of the Great Pyramid was seldom matched. The economic and political landscape of Egypt had begun to change. Resources were stretched across an increasingly complex state bureaucracy, and pharaohs faced new administrative and territorial demands. Despite these pressures, pyramids remained central to religious and royal ideology. The fifth dynasty saw innovations in religious expression, particularly the emphasis on solar worship. Pyramids from this period, such as the Pyramid of Sahir at Abusir, were often accompanied by elaborate mortuary temples and causeways reflecting the growing importance of the sun god Ra in royal funerary practices. These complexes incorporated reliefs and inscriptions emphasizing the pharaoh's relationship with the divine, reinforcing his role as intermediary between gods and people. Architecturally, the pyramids became smaller and more modest in scale, but they retained precision in construction and orientation, demonstrating the enduring mastery of Egyptian engineers. During the 6th dynasty, the trend toward smaller pyramids continued. Pharaohs such as Pepi I and Pepi II constructed pyramids that, while reduced in size compared to Khufu or Khafre, remained technically sophisticated. Internal chambers, passageways, and relieving structures were carefully designed, often using locally quarried limestone. The pyramid texts inscribed spells and religious formulas began to appear extensively on walls, providing detailed guidance for the pharaoh's journey in the afterlife. These texts mark a significant evolution in Egyptian funerary practice, linking architecture, ritual, and belief into an integrated system. The decline of pyramid building during the later Old Kingdom and into the First Intermediate period was influenced by several factors. Centralized power weakened, and economic constraints limited the resources available for massive construction projects. Regional governors gained more autonomy, and religious practices diversified. Consequently, tomb construction shifted from large-scale pyramids to smaller mastabas and rock-cut tombs. Despite this shift, the technical knowledge and architectural principles developed during the Pyramid Age continued to influence Egyptian construction, demonstrating a continuity of skill and tradition. In the Middle Kingdom, circa 2055 to 1650 BCE, pyramid building resumed with renewed vigor, but on a more modest scale. Pharaohs of this period, including Amenhotep I and Senusret I, constructed pyramids using mud brick cores with limestone casing. These pyramids were generally smaller than Old Kingdom pyramids, reflecting both economic constraints and changes in religious emphasis. However, the precision of construction remained notable, and complex internal layouts continued to include burial chambers, corridors, and ventilation shafts. The focus shifted from monumental mass to functional design, with attention to both structural integrity and ritual requirements. The Middle Kingdom pyramids also reflect innovations in labor organization and construction techniques. Workers' villages continued to support construction, providing shelter, food, medical care, and workshops. Seasonal labor remained a key feature, with agricultural workers contributing during periods when farming was impossible due to the Nile's inundation. Skilled artisans oversaw stone shaping, inscriptions, and chamber construction, while foremen and scribes ensured efficient coordination and accurate record-keeping. This system allowed for consistent progress despite reduced resources, and smaller workforce numbers compared to the Old Kingdom. Religious and symbolic practices evolved as well. Pyramid texts, previously reserved for the elite pharaohs of the Old Kingdom, became more widespread. The texts emphasized protection, guidance, and sustenance for the deceased ruler, reinforcing the pyramid as both tomb and spiritual instrument. Mortuary temples and causeways continued to play an important role, linking the pyramid to the landscape, the Nile, and the broader religious framework of the state. Astronomical orientation remained precise, reflecting enduring knowledge of surveying, geometry, and celestial cycles. The New Kingdom, circa 1550 to 1070 BCE, saw a marked departure from traditional pyramid construction. Pharaohs increasingly chose hidden rock-cut tombs in the Valley of the Kings and elsewhere, reflecting both practical and religious considerations. The challenges of securing tombs against grave robbers, along with shifts in religious ideology and resource allocation, made large pyramid projects less viable. However, the legacy of pyramid architecture persisted in smaller monuments, temple structures, and the continued use of precise engineering techniques. Mortuary practices retained elements developed during the Pyramid Age, including orientation, inscriptions, and ritual provisioning. Despite the decline in pyramid construction, the cultural and symbolic significance of pyramids endured. They remain central in Egyptian cosmology and royal ideology, embodying the pharaoh's divine authority and connection to the gods. They also served as enduring monuments, visible across the desert landscape, reminding successive generations of the achievements, beliefs, and organizational skill of their ancestors. Archaeological and textual evidence demonstrates that knowledge gained during the Pyramid Age influenced construction, administration, and religious practice throughout Egypt's history, ensuring continuity even as building techniques and political circumstances evolved. Rediscovery and modern research further illuminate the sophistication of pyramid construction. Excavations of worker villages, quarries, and pyramid complexes provide insight into the logistical and social systems supporting these monumental projects. Analyses of stone transportation, labor organization, and architectural precision reveal an extraordinary combination of engineering skill, administrative oversight, and religious dedication. Modern experiments in quarrying, lifting, and stone placement confirm the plausibility of methods inferred from archaeological evidence, underscoring the remarkable accomplishments of ancient Egyptian builders. The construction of the pyramids was not merely an architectural endeavor. It represented the culmination of state organization, labor management, and resource planning. The logistical demands of moving millions of heavy stones over considerable distances required careful coordination, meticulous scheduling, and a system capable of sustaining thousands of workers for decades. Archaeological evidence from the Giza Plateau and nearby sites reveals that workers were housed in carefully planned villages. These settlements included dormitories, bakeries, breweries, and workshops, demonstrating that the ancient Egyptians understood the importance of workforce provisioning, rest, and skill specialization. Stone quarrying and transportation were central to pyramid construction. Limestone, the primary material, was quarried locally and transported to the site via sledges, rollers, and prepared causeways. Granite, used for internal chambers and structural features, was brought from Aswan, more than 800 kilometers away. Often by river transport along the Nile, workers used wooden sledges to haul stones over sand, and experimental archaeology indicates that a small amount of water poured on the sand significantly reduced friction, making the movement of multi-ton blocks feasible. Teams of laborers coordinated their efforts to move, lift, and place these stones with remarkable precision, ensuring alignment and structural stability. Workforce organization was hierarchical and multifaceted. Skilled artisans, masons, and engineers oversaw critical tasks such as carving stone, constructing internal chambers, and aligning blocks. Seasonal laborers, often drawn from agricultural communities during the Nile's inundation, supplemented the permanent workforce. Foremen and administrators coordinated teams, monitored progress, and documented labor allocation, material usage, and resource distribution. The rotational and hierarchical structure of the workforce ensured efficiency, minimized downtime, and allowed continuity of work across decades of construction. The architectural design of the pyramids reflects both functional and symbolic considerations. Internal chambers and passageways were carefully constructed to withstand immense pressure from the overlying mass of stone. Relieving chambers and corbelled ceilings above the king's chamber in Khufu's pyramid, for instance, demonstrate a sophisticated understanding of load distribution. The precise alignment of pyramids to the cardinal points and the careful orientation of internal shafts toward specific stars illustrate the integration of architectural planning with astronomy, reinforcing the spiritual and cosmic significance of these structures. Pyramids were more than tombs. They were instruments of state ideology and religious belief. Each pyramid symbolized the pharaoh's divine authority and served as a conduit for his ascent to the afterlife. Rituals were performed during construction and after completion, ensuring that the tomb fulfilled its spiritual function. The placement of funerary goods, from food and vessels to jewelry and ceremonial objects, reflected detailed planning for the pharaoh's journey beyond death. Hieroglyphic inscriptions provided guidance, protection, and blessings, intertwining architecture, labor, and religious devotion into a unified system. Economic and administrative structures were critical to sustaining pyramid projects. Provisioning thousands of workers required organized supply chains for food, tools, water, and materials. Bakers, brewers, carpenters, and toolmakers worked alongside masons and laborers, highlighting the complex interplay of technical, logistical, and social systems. Documentation from the period, including the Diary of Mirror, reveals a high level of record-keeping demonstrating that material transport, labor allocation, and construction schedules were carefully monitored and adjusted as needed. As pyramid construction evolved over the centuries, changes in scale, technique, and style reflected broader societal shifts. In the Old Kingdom, pyramids such as those at Giza represented the apex of monumental building, with vast numbers of workers, large stones, and highly coordinated logistics. During the Middle Kingdom, pyramid building continued, but with reduced scale and increased use of mud brick cores and smaller workforce numbers, reflecting changes in economic resources and political power. By the New Kingdom, pharaohs largely abandoned large pyramids, favoring hidden tombs in the Valley of the Kings to prevent looting and accommodate changing religious practices. Despite the decline in pyramid construction, the knowledge and techniques developed during the Pyramid Age persisted. The principles of stone cutting, load distribution, surveying, and labor organization influenced later tombs, temples, and monumental architecture throughout Egypt. The enduring visibility of pyramids across the desert served not only as markers of the past, but also as symbols of continuity, demonstrating the lasting impact of engineering, religious, and administrative achievements developed over centuries. Rediscovery and modern study have further illuminated the sophistication of pyramid construction. Excavations of quarries, worker villages, and pyramid complexes reveal the scale of organization, the precision of engineering, and the integration of spiritual belief with practical labor. Studies of block placement, alignment, and construction techniques confirm that the pyramid's durability was no accident. It was the product of careful planning, sustained oversight, and cumulative knowledge passed down through generations. Today, these monuments continue to inspire research, offering insight into the remarkable capabilities of ancient Egyptian civilization. During the Middle Kingdom, approximately 2055 to 1650 BCE, pyramid construction experienced a resurgence, though on a smaller and more economical scale than the monumental projects of the Old Kingdom. Pharaohs such as Amenhotep I, Senusret I, and Senusret III built pyramids that reflected both continuity and adaptation. Rather than relying entirely on massive limestone blocks, many Middle Kingdom pyramids incorporated cores of mud brick faced with limestone, a practical adaptation that reduced both material costs and construction time. While smaller in size, these pyramids retained careful attention to alignment, chamber design, and ritual functionality, demonstrating that architectural and spiritual sophistication continued even as scale diminished. The internal layouts of Middle Kingdom pyramids were often complex. Burial chambers were placed at greater depth within the structures, sometimes using elaborate passageways and false chambers to deter potential tomb robbers. Pyramid texts, religious inscriptions first developed in the Old Kingdom, became increasingly standardized, covering walls with spells and guidance for the pharaoh's afterlife journey. Mortuary temples and causeways continued to connect the pyramids with the Nile, facilitating rituals and ensuring a symbolic linkage between the king, the state, and the divine. Labor organization during the Middle Kingdom adapted to the smaller scale of projects. Workforce numbers were reduced relative to Old Kingdom pyramids, and there was greater reliance on skilled artisans rather than large teams of unskilled laborers. Seasonal labor from agricultural communities remained an important supplement. Archaeological evidence suggests that these workers continued to live in nearby villages equipped with essential facilities, including bakeries, breweries, and dormitories. The logistical system remained highly organized, with administrators managing supplies, labor rotations, and construction schedules to ensure continuous progress. By the time of the New Kingdom, circa 1550 to 1070 BCE, the era of large-scale pyramid construction had largely ended. Pharaohs shifted toward rock-cut tombs in hidden valleys. Most notably in the Valley of the Kings, these tombs, often hewn deep into limestone cliffs, allowed for secure burial away from potential looters and reflected both changes in religious practice and political priorities. The New Kingdom emphasized grand temples, monumental statuary, and obelisks, redirecting resources that had once been allocated to pyramid construction. Despite this shift, the principles and techniques developed during the Pyramid Age persisted. Surveying, stone cutting, logistics, and ceremonial considerations informed the design of these new tombs, creating continuity between eras. Religious and symbolic functions remain central. Even in smaller pyramids or rock-cut tombs, alignment with cardinal points, solar orientation, and inscriptions continued to reflect the pharaoh's role as intermediary with the divine. Funerary goods, including vessels, furniture, and offerings, were carefully placed to ensure the afterlife journey, while priests performed rituals to sanctify the tomb and protect the king's spirit. The transition from open, monumental pyramids to hidden rock-cut tombs illustrates a practical adaptation to social, economic, and security pressures rather than a decline in spiritual or technical sophistication. The long-term cultural and symbolic legacy of the pyramids extended beyond construction techniques. The image of pyramids dominated the Egyptian landscape and collective imagination, becoming enduring symbols of pharaonic authority and divine connection. They were visible reminders of the state's capacity to mobilize resources, organize labor, and integrate religious practice into everyday life. Over centuries, the pyramids continued to influence Egyptian architecture, from mortuary temples to smaller tombs and ceremonial complexes, ensuring that the principles of Old and Middle Kingdom engineering remained part of the cultural framework. Rediscovery in later periods brought renewed attention to these monuments. Greek and Roman travelers marveled at the scale and precision of the pyramids, while early modern explorers and archaeologists documented and studied them systematically. Excavations of worker villages, quarries, and pyramid complexes have revealed details about logistics, social organization, and technical skill, confirming the extraordinary planning and coordination required for their construction. Studies of alignment, block placement, and construction methods demonstrate that the pyramid's durability and precision were deliberate achievements, not accidental results. Today, the pyramids of Giza and other sites continue to inspire research and admiration. Modern technology, including 3D scanning, ground-penetrating radar, and computer modeling, allows scholars to examine structural stability, internal chambers, and construction methods with unprecedented detail. Conservation efforts address the impact of time, weather, and human activity, ensuring that these monuments, which have stood for millennia, remain accessible and protected. The pyramids are not only relics of the past, but also active symbols of cultural heritage, representing a civilization's mastery of engineering, religious thought, and administrative organization. In summary, the history of pyramid construction spans centuries of innovation, adaptation, and cultural expression. From the earliest mastabas to the monumental pyramids of the Old Kingdom, through the adaptive Middle Kingdom structures, and into the hidden tombs of the New Kingdom, pyramids reflect the intersection of technical skill, labor organization, religious belief, and state authority. Even after the cessation of large-scale construction, the principles and practices of pyramid building continued to inform Egyptian architecture, administration, and ritual practice, leaving a legacy that has endured to the present day. While the pyramids themselves stand as silent monuments of royal power, the lives of the people who built them are equally central to understanding their history. Archaeological discoveries of worker villages at Giza, Saqqara, and other pyramid sites provide a rare window into the daily realities of laborers, artisans, and support personnel who sustained these massive projects. Far from being slaves in the later sense of the word, evidence indicates that these workers were organized, fed, housed, and cared for in a systematic manner by the state. Worker settlements consisted of dormitories arranged in orderly rows, providing communal housing for thousands of men. Excavations reveal compact sleeping quarters, often with wooden platforms, mats, or simple bedding. Nearby were bakeries capable of producing large quantities of bread, breweries supplying beer as a dietary staple, and workshops for toolmaking, carpentry, and pottery. These facilities highlight a carefully maintained support system designed to ensure both productivity and physical well-being. Seasonal laborers were often recruited during the Nile's annual inundation when agricultural work was temporarily impossible, integrating farming schedules with construction needs. Dietary evidence shows that workers received regular rations of bread, beer, meat, and vegetables. Analysis of animal bones indicates that cattle, goats, and fish were part of the diet, supplemented with legumes and grains. Meals were often communal, reinforcing social cohesion and maintaining morale. Archaeologists have found traces of fish, ox, and fowl at worker villages, along with storage facilities for grain and other provisions. The presence of bakeries and breweries demonstrates that large-scale food production was both organized and necessary to sustain the workforce over decades. Medical care was also part of the worker infrastructure. Skeletal remains show evidence of healed injuries, suggesting that care was provided for fractures, wounds, and other occupational hazards. The long-term survival of workers with serious injuries indicates that recovery support was available and that laborers were valued members of the construction system. This medical attention, coupled with proper nutrition, enabled the sustained workforce required to manage the complex and protracted building projects. Work crews were divided into hierarchical teams with specialized roles. Stonecutters shaped blocks to precise dimensions, while haulers transported them across the desert on sledges or along ramps. Carpenters constructed sledges and wooden tools, and masons arranged stones in precise alignment. Administrative teams, including scribes and overseers, documented material use, labor hours, and project progress. This combination of skilled and semi-skilled labor, supported by administrative oversight, allowed construction to proceed with remarkable efficiency. Coordination of materials and logistics was equally impressive. Limestone quarries near the construction sites supplied the bulk of stone, while granite from Aswan required long-distance transport along the Nile. Teams of laborers using sledges and rollers moved multi-ton blocks over sand and prepared causeways. Experimental archaeology has confirmed that small amounts of water poured on sand reduce friction, making transport more efficient. This system, supported by food provision, housing, and labor rotation, illustrates a sophisticated understanding of both human organization and the physical demands of moving immense materials. Even rituals and religious practices were integrated into the construction process. Certain ceremonies were conducted during foundation laying, stone placement, and completion of key structural elements. Priests oversaw the sanctification of the site, ensuring that the pyramid not only functioned as a tomb but also fulfilled its spiritual purpose. Funerary goods were delivered and stored in accordance with strict ceremonial schedules, and inscriptions guided both builders and future priests in the correct performance of religious duties. The worker villages themselves reflect the state's ability to mobilize, sustain, and organize large populations. They were often located strategically near quarries, water sources, and construction sites, ensuring efficiency in both labor and material transport. Archaeologists have noted that streets were laid out in grids, communal spaces were provided for food preparation, and workshops were distributed to minimize disruption and maximize productivity. The scale and organization of these settlements underscore the administrative and logistical sophistication of the Egyptian state during the height of pyramid construction. In summary, while the pyramids are visible symbols of pharaonic power, their construction depended on a vast, organized, and supported workforce. The combination of skilled artisans, seasonal laborers, and administrative personnel, supported by careful provisioning of food, shelter, and medical care, created the conditions necessary for the monumental achievements of Old and Middle Kingdom Egypt. These workers, often overlooked in popular narratives, were essential to the creation of structures that have endured for millennia, and their lives offer a detailed picture of the social, logistical, and cultural systems that made the pyramids possible. The engineering behind pyramid construction represents a remarkable achievement of ancient Egyptian planning, surveying, and craftsmanship. Each pyramid required precise measurements, careful planning of internal chambers and passageways, and a coordinated system to lift and place millions of stone blocks, some weighing several tons, with astonishing accuracy. The knowledge and techniques developed during the Old and Middle Kingdoms, demonstrate both empirical understanding of physics and innovative problem-solving. One of the most critical aspects of construction was the use of ramps to transport heavy stones to higher levels. Archaeological evidence suggests several types of ramp systems may have been employed, including straight ramps extending from the base, zigzagging ramps built along pyramid faces, and spiral ramps encircling the pyramid. These ramps, likely constructed from mud brick, limestone chippings, and sand, allowed workers to haul multi-ton stones using sledges and ropes. Lubricating the sand with water, a technique confirmed by experimental archaeology, reduced friction and made the movement of large blocks more feasible. Surveying and alignment were equally crucial. Pyramids were aligned with remarkable precision to the cardinal points, often deviating by less than 1 degree. Ancient Egyptian surveyors employed instruments such as the merkhet, a type of sighting tool, and the plumb bob to ensure verticality and orientation. They used astronomical observations, including the positions of stars and the sun, to achieve accurate alignments. This precise orientation was not merely aesthetic. It reflected cosmological and religious considerations, linking the pharaoh with solar and stellar cycles. Block placement demanded meticulous coordination. Workers carefully leveled each layer, ensuring consistent angles and stability. Limestone casing stones were smoothed to achieve the iconic polished appearance, while internal chambers, such as the King's Chamber in the Great Pyramid, required precise placement of massive granite blocks. These chambers were often constructed with corbelled ceilings or relieving chambers to distribute weight and prevent collapse, demonstrating sophisticated understanding of load-bearing principles. Quarrying techniques were adapted to the hardness and properties of each stone. Limestone from nearby quarries was extracted using copper chisels, wooden mallets, and stone tools. For granite and harder materials, workers employed dolerite pounding stones to shape blocks. Transportation from distant quarries, such as those in Aswan, involved river transport along the Nile. Stones were loaded onto large boats, navigated downstream, and then hauled to construction sites via prepared causeways. This complex logistical system required careful planning and coordination between quarrying, transport, and placement crews. The internal layout of pyramids also demonstrates architectural innovation. Passageways, chambers, and shafts were carefully designed to distribute weight, prevent structural failure, and fulfill ritual functions. False passages, blocking stones, and concealed entrances were often incorporated to deter potential tomb robbers. In some pyramids, shafts were aligned with stars associated with the afterlife, reflecting the integration of engineering, astronomy, and religious belief. Mortuary temples, causeways, and subsidiary structures formed a coherent complex, linking the pyramid to the landscape, the Nile, and ceremonial activity. Precision in measurement was essential throughout construction. Blocks were cut to standard dimensions, often around 1.0 to 1.5 meters per side, though larger granite blocks could exceed 5 tons. Skilled masons ensured that each layer maintained exact alignment and angle, creating the pyramid's characteristic smooth faces. Techniques such as using leveling instruments, plumb lines, and wooden measuring rods enabled workers to achieve uniformity across vast structures. Even minor errors could have consequences for stability, so oversight and repeated checks were integral to the process. Labor organization complemented engineering methods. Teams of masons, stonecutters, haulers, and support personnel worked under foremen, with scribes recording progress, materials, and workforce allocation. Seasonal laborers augmented permanent crews during the Nile's inundation, ensuring a continuous workforce. Support facilities in nearby villages, including bakeries, breweries, medical stations, and workshops, allowed workers to maintain productivity over decades. The integration of human resources, material supply, and technical skill underlines the extraordinary administrative capacity required for pyramid construction. In addition to practical engineering, pyramids embodied symbolic and religious principles. The precision of construction, alignment with celestial bodies, and careful planning of internal spaces reflected cosmological beliefs. Each stone was not merely functional, but part of a larger spiritual framework, ensuring the pharaoh's safe journey to the afterlife. Construction itself was imbued with ritual significance. Foundation ceremonies, placement of keystones, and consecration of temples and chambers reinforced the sacred purpose of the pyramid. The cumulative result of these engineering techniques, logistical organization, and religious integration is evident in the enduring stability of the pyramids. Despite millennia of exposure to wind, sand, earthquakes, and human activity, the core structures remain largely intact, a testament to the meticulous planning, skilled labor, and innovative techniques employed by ancient Egyptian builders. The pyramids stand not only as tombs, but as enduring monuments to the ability of human society to mobilize resources, apply knowledge, and create works of unparalleled precision and durability. The pyramids of Egypt, particularly those at Giza, are remarkable not only for their scale, but for the precise measurements and careful planning that guided every stage of construction. The Great Pyramid of Khufu, the largest of them all, originally rose to approximately 146.6 meters, 481 feet, in height, though centuries of erosion and the removal of casing stones have reduced it to roughly 138.8 meters, 455 feet. Its base forms a near-perfect square, measuring approximately 230.4 meters, 756 feet, on each side, with an alignment to true north that deviates by only a fraction of a degree. Such precision reflects the Egyptians' advanced surveying and measurement capabilities, achieved without modern instruments. The sheer volume of material required for the Great Pyramid underscores the scale of the endeavor. Estimates indicate that around 2.3 million limestone blocks were used, each weighing on average 2.3 to 2.5 tons. Larger granite stones, particularly those used in the king's chamber, could weigh as much as 25 to 80 tons. These stones were quarried, transported, and placed with extraordinary accuracy. Quarrying near Giza supplied the bulk of limestone, while granite was brought from Aswan over 800 kilometers away, primarily via Nile transport. Boats and barges carried these massive stones downstream, after which teams of workers hauled them over prepared causeways using sledges and rollers. Construction timelines for these monumental projects extended over decades. Records, inscriptions, and archaeological analysis suggest that the Great Pyramid may have been built over a period of approximately 20 years during Khufu's reign. Daily work schedules were organized into teams and shifts with skilled masons, laborers, and support personnel coordinated by foremen and overseers. Seasonal workers from agricultural regions supplemented the permanent workforce during periods when the Nile's floodwaters made farming temporarily impossible, ensuring a consistent labor pool. Smaller pyramids, such as those of Khafur and Menkaure, followed similar organizational principles but with reduced scale and material requirements. Khafur's pyramid, for instance, rises to roughly 136.4 meters, 448 feet, with a base of approximately 215 meters, 706 feet, on each side. Menkaure's pyramid is considerably smaller, standing at about 65 meters, 213 feet in height, with a base of roughly 102 meters, 335 feet, per side. Despite the differences in size, the engineering principles remained consistent: precise alignment, careful block placement, and sophisticated internal chamber design. The labor force for these projects was substantial. Archaeological studies suggest that tens of thousands of workers were involved in the construction of the Great Pyramid. Permanent skilled artisans, responsible for shaping and placing stone, worked alongside temporary seasonal laborers who transported blocks, prepared ramps, and supported construction activities. Teams were subdivided into gangs and crews, each responsible for specific tasks, and progress was meticulously recorded by scribes to ensure efficiency and coordination. Logistical management extended beyond labor to include food, water, tools, and shelter. Worker villages contained bakeries capable of producing thousands of loaves of bread per day, breweries supplying beer, and storage facilities for grains and other staples. Evidence of medical care, including healed fractures and treatment of injuries, indicates that the workforce's health and survival were priorities. Tools such as copper chisels, dolerite pounding stones, wooden mallets, and sledges were manufactured and maintained on site, allowing continuous progress over decades. The integration of precise measurements, block weights, and labor management demonstrates a remarkable level of organization and engineering sophistication. Each block was cut to specified dimensions, fitted into place and aligned with adjacent stones to ensure stability. Layers were leveled carefully and corners and edges were checked repeatedly to maintain accuracy across hundreds of thousands of blocks. Internal chambers and passageways were designed with weight distribution in mind, using corbelled ceilings, relieving chambers, and precise stone placement to prevent collapse. The construction of pyramids also incorporated ceremonial and symbolic considerations into engineering decisions. Alignments with cardinal points, orientation toward specific stars, and placement of internal shafts reflected both cosmological beliefs and ritual requirements. Foundation ceremonies, consecration of keystones, and dedication of mortuary temples reinforced the sacred purpose of the structure. In this way, engineering, logistics, and religious practice were fully integrated, creating a pyramid that was simultaneously a functional tomb, a symbol of divine kingship, and a technical masterpiece. Even after thousands of years, the dimensions, block weights, and construction sequences of the pyramids continue to inspire research and experimentation. Modern scholars and engineers study these ancient techniques to understand how tens of thousands of workers could construct structures of such scale and precision with relatively simple tools. The careful calculation of block weight, placement, ramp design, and workforce allocation demonstrates an advanced level of empirical knowledge, planning, and administration that allowed ancient Egyptians to create enduring monuments capable of withstanding the passage of millennia. Beyond their monumental scale and engineering mastery, the pyramids of Egypt were foremost expressions of religious belief and cultural ideology. Each pyramid functioned not only as a tomb but as a sacred instrument designed to secure the pharaoh's transition into the afterlife, reflecting the centrality of divine kingship in Egyptian society. The design, orientation, and ritual use of pyramids were deeply intertwined with cosmology, emphasizing the pharaoh's role as intermediary between the gods and humanity. The pyramids were aligned with remarkable precision to the cardinal points, demonstrating the Egyptians' sophisticated knowledge of astronomy. Internal shafts and chambers were often oriented toward specific stars, particularly those associated with the afterlife, such as the circumpolar stars in the north, which were considered eternal and imperishable, and Orion in the south, linked to Osiris, the god of resurrection. This astronomical alignment was more than symbolic. It guided the pharaoh's soul on its journey and ensured its eternal existence in the celestial realm. Religious texts and inscriptions within pyramids reinforced their sacred purpose. Pyramid texts, first appearing during the 5th and 6th dynasties, included spells, invocations, and guidance for the deceased pharaoh, outlining steps for transformation, protection, and sustenance in the afterlife. These texts were etched directly onto walls and sarcophagi, integrating spiritual guidance into the very fabric of the architecture. The inscriptions emphasized continuity, linking the ruler with predecessors, gods, and cosmic order. In later periods, coffin texts and other funerary inscriptions extended these principles to broader segments of the population, though the pyramids themselves remained exclusive symbols of royal divinity. Mortuary temples, causeways, and subsidiary structures complemented the pyramid's religious function. Mortuary temples were sites of ritual activity, including offerings of food, drink, and incense, performed by priests on behalf of the deceased king. Causeways connected the pyramids to the Nile or other ceremonial areas, facilitating processions and linking the tomb to the broader sacred landscape. Subsidiary pyramids for queens and smaller satellite structures emphasized the interconnectedness of the royal family and the extended ritual system, reinforcing social hierarchy alongside spiritual purpose. The symbolism of the pyramid shape itself carried profound meaning. Its geometric form, a square base rising to a point, represented the sun's rays descending to Earth, connecting the terrestrial realm with the heavens. This shape symbolized stability, endurance, and the pharaoh's ascent into the eternal sky. The smooth outer casing stones, polished to gleam in sunlight, enhanced this connection, reflecting light and reinforcing the impression of divine radiance. In this way, the pyramid functioned simultaneously as tomb, temple, and cosmic instrument. Rituals performed during construction were equally significant. The laying of foundation stones often involved ceremonial dedication, blessings by priests, and the invocation of deities to protect both the structure and the pharaoh. Key stones, such as the capstone or pyramidion, were placed with elaborate rites, symbolizing the completion of the pharaoh's journey and the unification of earthly labor with divine purpose. These ceremonies reinforced the spiritual dimension of construction, ensuring that each stage of the project adhered to sacred principles. Funerary goods placed within pyramids served both practical and symbolic purposes. Furniture, vessels, jewelry, weapons, and food were provided to sustain the pharaoh in the afterlife. Their careful arrangement reflected a combination of logistical planning, religious observance, and cultural expression. These items were often inscribed or decorated with protective symbols, aligning with pyramid texts and ensuring their efficacy in supporting the deceased ruler. The pyramids also reinforced social and political ideology. Their scale and visibility across the desert landscape symbolized the centralized power of the pharaoh and the capacity of the state to mobilize resources, labor, and expertise. Monumental construction projects served as demonstrations of authority, uniting diverse communities under a shared religious and cultural framework. The integration of labor organization, provisioning, and ritual practice highlighted the Egyptian emphasis on order, both societal and cosmic. Even in periods when pyramid construction declined, the cultural and symbolic significance persisted. Rock-cut tombs, smaller pyramids, and ceremonial structures continued to reflect the principles established during the Old and Middle Kingdoms. The ideological framework, divine kingship, cosmic alignment, ritual observance, and provision for the afterlife remained central to Egyptian society, illustrating the enduring influence of the pyramid tradition. In sum, the pyramids were not merely architectural feats. They were complex cultural instruments. They integrated engineering, labor organization, astronomy, ritual, and ideology into a coherent system that reflected the Egyptians' understanding of life, death, and the cosmos. Their enduring presence across the desert is a testament to the civilization's ability to translate abstract belief into physical form, creating monuments that were simultaneously functional, symbolic, and eternal. By the end of the Old Kingdom, the era of Grand Pyramid construction began to wane. Several interrelated factors contributed to this decline, including economic strain, political decentralization, and evolving religious practices. As Egypt's central authority weakened, provincial governors gained more autonomy, reducing the ability of the pharaoh to marshal the vast resources required for monumental projects. Simultaneously, the cumulative cost of quarrying, transporting, and assembling millions of stone blocks placed increasing demands on the state's economy. During the first intermediate period, circa 2181 to 2055 BCE, centralized control diminished further, and large-scale pyramid projects were largely abandoned. Regional rulers focused on smaller tombs and mortuary structures that reflected their local authority rather than national dominance. These tombs, often rock-cut or modest mud-brick pyramids, maintained essential symbolic and ritual features but on a reduced scale. The continuity of internal chamber design, alignment, and inscriptions demonstrates that architectural knowledge persisted even as the scale of construction contracted. The Middle Kingdom saw a partial revival of pyramid building, though with practical adaptations. Pharaohs such as Amenhotep I and Senusret I first constructed pyramids with cores made of mud brick, faced with limestone casing. These pyramids were smaller and more economical, reflecting both resource limitations and strategic adjustments to maintain royal prestige. Internal layouts often included burial chambers, corridors, and false passages designed to protect the pharaoh's remains, integrating engineering and ritual functionality. Pyramid texts continued to be inscribed on walls, preserving religious practices while adapting to the new scale of construction. By the New Kingdom, circa 1550 to 1070 BCE, the era of open, monumental pyramids had largely ended. Pharaohs increasingly chose hidden rock-cut tombs in the Valley of the Kings and other secluded locations. This shift responded to practical concerns. Larger tombs were more vulnerable to looting, and hidden tombs offered greater security for the pharaoh's remains. These rock-cut tombs retained essential ritual and symbolic elements, including orientation, burial provisions, and inscriptions, while reflecting changes in political priorities and resource allocation. Economic and administrative factors also shaped the decline of pyramid construction. Large pyramids required tens of thousands of workers, extensive food production, and continuous management over decades. As political power decentralized, maintaining such a workforce became increasingly difficult. Seasonal labor could still be recruited, but sustaining large permanent crews and supporting infrastructure became less feasible. Consequently, pharaohs opted for tombs that could be completed more efficiently while still fulfilling religious and symbolic requirements. Religious practices evolved alongside these practical changes. The principles established during the Pyramid Age, divine kingship, cosmic alignment, provision for the afterlife, persisted but were applied in new contexts. Rock-cut tombs often included funerary chambers, corridors, and multiple rooms for goods and offerings, mirroring the symbolic functions of pyramids. Astronomical alignment, rituals conducted by priests, and inscriptions guiding the pharaoh's soul remained central. In this way, the spiritual and cultural objectives of pyramid construction were preserved even as architectural forms changed. Despite the cessation of large pyramid projects, the symbolic power of the pyramids endured. Their visibility across the desert landscape served as enduring reminders of pharaonic authority and the civilization's organizational capabilities. They continued to influence Egyptian architecture from smaller pyramids and tombs to temples and ceremonial complexes. Even during periods of political upheaval, the pyramids remained cultural touchstones, demonstrating the lasting impact of the Old and Middle Kingdom's innovations. Rediscovery of the pyramids by later civilizations, including Greek, Roman, and Islamic observers, reinforced their significance. Historical accounts documented the scale, precision, and religious importance of these monuments, preserving knowledge for future generations. Modern archaeology has further illuminated the factors contributing to the decline of pyramid construction, including economic pressures, logistical challenges, and changes in religious ideology. Studies of worker villages, quarries, and construction techniques reveal a society capable of extraordinary achievement, whose decline in pyramid building reflected adaptive responses to changing circumstances rather than a loss of skill or knowledge. In conclusion, the decline of pyramid construction was a gradual process influenced by political, economic, and practical considerations. While monumental pyramids became less common, the underlying principles of alignment, ritual observance, and provision for the afterlife persisted in smaller tombs and rock-cut structures. The enduring presence of pyramids in the Egyptian landscape serves as a testament to the civilization's mastery of engineering, organization, and cultural expression, ensuring that even as construction methods evolved, the pyramid's symbolic and practical significance remained central to Egyptian society. Following the gradual cessation of pyramid construction, the monuments themselves remained as enduring symbols of Egypt's power, religious ideology, and technical achievement. Even as dynasties rose and fell, and the political landscape of Egypt shifted through the Middle Kingdom, New Kingdom, and later periods, the pyramids continued to dominate the desert landscape. Their presence reinforced the concept of divine kingship, inspiring subsequent rulers, architects, and scholars to respect and learn from these ancient achievements. During the late period and into Greco-Roman times, the pyramids were no longer built as tombs but remained objects of fascination. Greek historians such as Herodotus documented the pyramid's scale and construction techniques, often relying on local guides and oral traditions. Roman writers similarly marveled at their size, precision, and endurance. While many details were exaggerated or misinterpreted, these early accounts preserved recognition of the pyramids as monumental achievements of human organization, engineering, and religious devotion. The Islamic period in Egypt also preserved the pyramids as landmarks and cultural icons. Locals incorporated them into regional geography and storytelling, and some pyramids were partially restored or maintained for ceremonial purposes. The structure's alignment, scale, and visibility ensured that they remained central to Egypt's identity, even when their original function as tombs was largely forgotten. Modern rediscovery and systematic study of the pyramids began in earnest in the 18th and 19th centuries. Scholars, explorers, and archaeologists undertook surveys, excavations, and documentation of pyramid sites, revealing technical details, inscriptions, and supporting structures that had remained hidden for millennia. Detailed measurements confirmed the precise alignment of the Great Pyramid to the cardinal points, the exact angles of its faces, and the careful leveling of its base. These studies also clarified the organization of labor, transport methods, and logistical systems that had enabled construction on such a massive scale. Excavations of worker villages and quarries provided unprecedented insight into the lives of the people who built the pyramids. Evidence of housing, bakeries, breweries, workshops, and medical care revealed a highly organized system for sustaining thousands of laborers over decades. Analysis of skeletal remains, diet, and injuries confirmed that workers were supported with food, shelter, and care, underscoring the sophisticated administrative capabilities of the Egyptian state. These discoveries also emphasized that pyramid construction was not simply a physical endeavor, but a complex social and logistical operation. In addition to archaeological studies, modern engineering experiments have tested theories about stone transportation, ramp construction, and block placement. Experimental archaeologists have demonstrated the feasibility of moving multi-ton stones using sledges over lubricated sand, lifting blocks with simple wooden levers, and constructing ramps capable of supporting continuous labor. These experiments confirm that the methods inferred from textual and material evidence were practical, allowing the pyramids to be built without advanced machinery while maintaining remarkable precision. The influence of Egyptian pyramids extends far beyond Egypt itself. Across the world, pyramids and pyramid-inspired architecture have appeared in diverse cultures, from Mesoamerica to modern memorials. The structural principles, geometric precision, and symbolic resonance of the pyramids have inspired architects, engineers, and artists for millennia. Their enduring presence in literature, film, art, and popular imagination continues to highlight their significance as both cultural and technical achievements. Even in the 21st century, the pyramids serve as a focal point for scientific study, tourism, and cultural preservation. Advanced technologies such as 3D laser scanning, ground-penetrating radar, and satellite imaging allow detailed examination of internal structures, hidden chambers, and structural stability. Conservation efforts aim to protect the monuments from environmental and human-induced damage, ensuring that they remain accessible to future generations while preserving their historical integrity. In summary, the legacy of the Egyptian pyramids encompasses engineering mastery, religious and cultural symbolism, social organization, and enduring influence on global architecture. Their rediscovery and study have provided profound insights into the capabilities of ancient Egypt, revealing a civilization capable of mobilizing labor, resources, and knowledge on an unprecedented scale. From the earliest mastabas to the monumental pyramids of the Old Kingdom, through adaptations in the Middle and New Kingdoms, and into modern archaeological research, the pyramids remain a defining achievement of human history, a testament to ingenuity, faith, and the desire for enduring legacy. The pyramids of Giza, built during the 4th dynasty, are the most studied and iconic examples of Egyptian pyramid construction. Khufu's pyramid, also known as the Great Pyramid, remains the largest, with a base measuring approximately 230.4 meters, 756 feet, on each side, and an original height of 146.6 meters, 481 feet. Inside, the pyramid contains multiple chambers and passageways, including the King's Chamber, Queen's Chamber, and the Grand Gallery. The King's Chamber, constructed from massive granite blocks, measures roughly 10.5 meters by 5.2 meters and is topped by 5 relieving chambers designed to distribute the weight of the overlying stones. These relieving chambers are considered a key innovation, demonstrating the Egyptians' understanding of load-bearing and structural stability. Khufu's pyramid is accompanied by a mortuary temple at its eastern base. This temple served as a site for ritual offerings and ceremonies honoring the deceased pharaoh. A causeway connects the mortuary temple to a valley temple near the Nile, allowing processions to link the pyramid with the river. a vital component of religious and logistical planning. The area surrounding the Great Pyramid also includes several subsidiary pyramids, often attributed to queens or close relatives. These smaller pyramids provided burial spaces for royal family members and demonstrate that the pyramid complex functioned as a carefully organized ensemble rather than a solitary monument. Khufu's Pyramid, the second largest at Giza, stands at roughly 136.4 meters, 448 feet, in height with a base of approximately 215 meters, 706 feet, per side. While slightly smaller than Khufu's pyramid, it retains similar internal features, including a burial chamber constructed from granite and limestone, corridors, and ventilation shafts aligned with astronomical points. Khufu's complex includes the Great Sphinx, carved from the adjacent limestone plateau, which may have served as both guardian and symbolic representation of the pharaoh. The mortuary temple of Khufu, like that of Khufu, facilitated offerings and rituals, emphasizing the integration of religious practice with architectural planning. Menkaur's Pyramid, the smallest of the three main pyramids at Giza, rises to approximately 65 meters, 230 feet, with a base of roughly 102 meters, 335 feet, per side. Its internal layout includes a burial chamber constructed primarily from granite, as well as subsidiary chambers and passageways. Menkaur's complex includes three smaller pyramids, often attributed to queens, illustrating continuity in the use of pyramid ensembles for royal and familial burials. The reduced scale of Menkaur's pyramid reflects both changes in available resources and evolving architectural strategies, while maintaining precision and alignment consistent with earlier pyramids. Beyond Giza, other notable pyramids illustrate variations in design and construction techniques. The step pyramid of Djoser at Saqqara, built during the Third Dynasty, represents a transitional form in which stacked mastabas were progressively enlarged to create a stepped structure. This pyramid, designed by the architect Imhotep, includes extensive subterranean galleries, ceremonial chambers, and a mortuary temple, demonstrating early experimentation with vertical construction and complex internal planning. The step pyramid complex includes courts, chapels, and storage galleries, highlighting the integration of ritual and logistics from the outset of pyramid building. Middle Kingdom pyramids, such as those of Amenhotep I and Senusret Ayat Lisht, further illustrate adaptation in scale and materials. These pyramids typically feature mud brick cores with limestone casing, internal chambers with vaulted ceilings, and mortuary temples connected by causeways to valley temples. Pyramid texts and inscriptions provided guidance and protection for the pharaoh's journey, while smaller subsidiary pyramids accommodated queens or high-ranking officials. Although more modest in scale compared to the Giza pyramids, these complexes maintained sophisticated internal layouts, reflecting continued emphasis on religious and architectural principles. Queen's pyramids, present in both Old and Middle Kingdom complexes, demonstrate the hierarchical structuring of burial practices. These smaller pyramids, often located adjacent to the main pyramid, range from 15 to 30 meters in height, depending on available resources and the status of the queen or royal relative. Internal chambers were designed to receive the deceased and accompanying funerary goods, following the same symbolic and ritual guidelines as the main pyramid. The presence of these subsidiary pyramids emphasizes the integrated nature of royal burial complexes, combining practical burial needs with religious symbolism and spatial organization. Valley temples and causeways were critical to the function of pyramid complexes. Valley temples, situated near the Nile or other water sources, facilitated the delivery of funerary goods, food, and materials, while also serving as ceremonial spaces. Causeways connected these temples to mortuary temples at the base of the pyramids, allowing ritual processions to link the river, the temple, and the tomb. This integration of landscape, architecture, and ritual demonstrates the Egyptians' holistic approach to funerary planning, ensuring both practical and spiritual needs were met. In summary, individual pyramids, their internal structures, mortuary complexes, and associated Queen's pyramids collectively illustrate the sophistication, precision, and symbolic depth of Egyptian pyramid building. Each complex was a self-contained unit combining engineering mastery, religious observance, logistical coordination, and social hierarchy. From massive Old Kingdom monuments at Giza to more modest Middle Kingdom pyramids, these structures provide detailed insight into the planning, materials, labor, and cultural priorities that defined ancient Egyptian civilization. The construction of Egyptian pyramids relied on a combination of local and distant materials, each chosen for its properties, availability, and suitability for specific structural and ceremonial purposes. Limestone, the most common material, formed the bulk of the pyramid's cores. Quarried primarily from the Giza Plateau itself or nearby Tura and Sara, limestone was relatively soft and easy to shape, yet durable enough to support immense weight. The outer casing stones, originally polished to a reflective finish, often came from higher quality Tura limestone, chosen for its fine texture and bright appearance. These casing stones allowed sunlight to reflect off the pyramid, creating a radiant effect visible across the desert and enhancing its symbolic significance as a representation of the sun's rays. Granite, quarried primarily from Aswan more than 800 kilometers south, was used for internal chambers, doorways, and other structural features requiring greater strength. Some granite blocks in the King's Chamber of the Great Pyramid weigh between 25 and 80 tons, highlighting the advanced logistical and engineering techniques required to transport and place them. Red granite was favored for its symbolic association with power, permanence, and divine authority. Diorite, basalt, and other hard stones were occasionally used for flooring. Statues or decorative elements, each selected for durability and aesthetic qualities. Quarrying techniques were adapted to the hardness and characteristics of each stone. For limestone, copper chisels, dolerite pounding stones, and wooden mallets were used to cut blocks along natural fissures. Quarry workers followed the rock's stratification to extract rectangular blocks, reducing the need for excessive shaping. Granite, harder and more difficult to work, was shaped primarily using dolerite hammers, pounding the surface repeatedly until the desired dimensions were achieved. Precision in cutting was essential, particularly for blocks forming chamber ceilings, passageways, and corners where even minor irregularities could compromise structural stability. Transportation of quarried stone required careful planning and innovation. Stones from local quarries were often dragged on wooden sledges over prepared tracks of leveled sand or mud. Experimental archaeology demonstrates that pouring a small amount of water on the sand significantly reduced friction, facilitating the movement of multi-ton blocks. Granite and other distant stones were transported by river. Using boats and barges along the Nile, once delivered to the pyramid site, teams of workers hauled the stones along causeways or constructed ramps to raise them to the necessary height. Ramps varied in design, including straight ramps extending from the base, zigzagging ramps along the pyramid sides, and spiral ramps encircling the structure. These methods allowed precise placement while minimizing labor inefficiency. Measurement and standardization were integral to quarrying and construction. Blocks were cut to specific dimensions to maintain consistent layer height, pyramid slope, and alignment. For example, limestone blocks for the Great Pyramid averaged 1.0 to 1.5 meters per side and weighed between 2.3 and 2.5 tons, while granite blocks in internal chambers were significantly larger. Skilled masons inspected each block, ensuring accurate shape, smooth surfaces, and proper fit with surrounding stones. The precise placement of each block contributed to the pyramid's stability, symmetry, and aesthetic appearance. Supporting infrastructure for material management was extensive. Storage areas near the construction site held stones, tools, and spare materials. Workshops produced and maintained sledges, ropes, and wooden tools essential for quarrying, transport, and placement. Supervisory teams documented block dimensions, source locations, and transport schedules to ensure continuous progress and prevent shortages or delays. This logistical system integrated quarrying, transport, and construction with labor organization, creating an efficient and sustainable process for building structures that required decades to complete. In addition to physical transportation, the supply of food, water, and shelter for workers was critical. Bakeries, breweries, and storage facilities near the quarries and pyramid sites ensured that laborers remained healthy and productive. Medical care for injuries, combined with proper nutrition and rest, allowed thousands of workers to sustain the physical demands of moving, shaping, and placing massive stones. Seasonal rotations of laborers from agricultural regions optimized workforce availability, particularly during the Nile's inundation when farming was impossible. The combination of locally quarried limestone, distant granite, and other stones, together with sophisticated quarrying, transportation, and logistical techniques, reflects the Egyptians' remarkable understanding of material properties, engineering principles, and organizational management. Each pyramid represents not merely an architectural achievement but a complex integration of geology, physics, labor, and religious symbolism. The choice of materials, methods of extraction, and careful planning of transport routes ensured that these monuments could endure millennia, preserving the legacy of the pharaohs and the civilization that built them. The internal design of pyramids represents one of the most sophisticated aspects of ancient Egyptian architecture. Within the massive stone structures, precise arrangements of chambers, corridors, and shafts served both practical and symbolic purposes, reflecting a deep understanding of structural mechanics, spatial organization, and religious function. Each element was carefully planned to ensure stability, security, and alignment with cosmological beliefs. In the Great Pyramid of Khufu, the main internal structures include the King's Chamber, Queen's Chamber, and the Grand Gallery. The King's Chamber, constructed entirely of granite, measures approximately 10.5 meters long, 5.2 meters wide, and 5.8 meters high. Above this chamber are 5 relieving chambers designed to distribute the immense weight of overlying stone, preventing collapse. The precision placement of massive granite blocks in the roof, some weighing 25 to 80 tons, demonstrates advanced knowledge of load-bearing principles and structural engineering. The Queen's Chamber, smaller than the King's Chamber, is constructed from limestone and measures roughly 5.75 meters by 5.23 meters. Although its purpose is still debated, it likely functioned as a symbolic or ritual chamber rather than a burial space. Between these chambers, the Grand Gallery serves as a passageway rising at an angle, approximately 8.6 meters high and 46.68 meters long, with corbelled limestone walls. The Grand Gallery may have been used to transport large granite blocks during construction, and also played a ceremonial role in aligning the pyramid's internal layout with religious symbolism. Ventilation shafts are another critical feature of pyramid design. The King's Chamber includes 2 narrow shafts, approximately 20 centimeters square, extending from the chamber to the exterior. One shaft points toward the northern circumpolar stars, considered eternal, while the other aligns with Orion, associated with Osiris, the god of rebirth. These shafts allowed airflow but also likely had symbolic significance, guiding the pharaoh's soul to the afterlife. Similar shafts exist in the Queen's Chamber, reinforcing the connection between internal architecture and cosmological alignment. Passageways and corridors within the pyramid were carefully engineered to facilitate movement, access, and ritual use. The descending passage extends from the pyramid's entrance to subterranean chambers, while ascending passages connect the lower areas to the Grand Gallery and burial chambers. Many pyramids incorporate false passages, blocking stones, and concealed corridors designed to deter tomb robbers, demonstrating the combination of security, ritual, and engineering. Construction of internal chambers required meticulous planning and coordination. Workers needed to lift massive stones into place, ensure precise alignment, and maintain structural integrity under immense weight. Corbelled ceilings, relieving chambers, and careful distribution of load prevented collapse, while exact measurements ensured that corridors and chambers were properly proportioned. Skilled masons shaped each block to fit tightly with adjacent stones, achieving both stability and precision. Mortuary temples and subsidiary structures complemented the internal chambers. Temples, often attached to the eastern base of the pyramid, served as spaces for offerings, rituals, and ceremonies. Causeways connected these temples to valley temples near the Nile, facilitating processions and linking the pyramid to water transport and ceremonial practice. These external structures reinforce the functional and symbolic design of the pyramid, ensuring that internal chambers and external rituals operated as an integrated system. The internal arrangement of pyramids also reflects adaptation over time. Middle Kingdom pyramids incorporated more compact internal designs, often with deeper burial chambers, false passages, and complex layouts intended to protect the king's remains. Even in smaller pyramids, ventilation shafts, ceremonial passageways, and chamber alignment continued to follow principles established during the Old Kingdom. This consistency demonstrates the enduring importance of internal design in ensuring both the practical and spiritual functions of the pyramid. In summary, the internal chambers, passageways, and shafts of pyramids represent a combination of advanced engineering, careful planning, and religious symbolism. From the massive granite king's chamber of Khufu to the intricate passageways and ventilation shafts, each element served structural, functional, and spiritual purposes. The integration of these internal features with external mortuary temples, causeways, and ceremonial spaces illustrates the holistic approach of Egyptian architects, ensuring that the pyramid functions simultaneously as a tomb, a monument, and a cosmological instrument. The construction of internal chambers and passageways required not only precise architectural planning, but also a highly organized workforce. Teams were divided according to skill and function, each responsible for specific stages of construction, from quarrying and shaping blocks to transporting and placing them within the pyramid. Skilled masons worked closely with foremen, following exact measurements and architectural plans to ensure that every chamber, passage, and shaft was correctly aligned and proportioned. The process typically began with the preparation of the foundation and base layers, ensuring that the pyramid was level and aligned to the cardinal points. Once the base was set, the internal chambers were planned, often before significant vertical construction began. For the king's chamber, massive granite blocks were cut and transported from quarries in Aswan, then moved along the Nile and hauled over desert causeways to the construction site. Teams of laborers, sometimes numbering dozens or hundreds for a single block, used sledges, ropes, and lubricated sand to reduce friction during transport. Placement of these massive stones involved wooden levers, scaffolding, and coordinated effort. Workers positioned each block with millimeter accuracy, ensuring stability and alignment with surrounding stones. Corbelled ceilings and relieving chambers above. Burial spaces were constructed using overlapping layers of stone to distribute weight away from sensitive areas, such as the king's chamber floor. Each layer was carefully measured and adjusted before the next block was placed, reflecting meticulous attention to structural integrity. The Grand Gallery, used to connect lower passages to the king's chamber, required coordinated lifting of multi-ton stones along a rising corridor. Ramps, wooden sledges, and pulley-like mechanisms enabled workers to elevate blocks while maintaining precise angles. The Grand Gallery itself often served as a workspace, allowing placement of corbelled blocks and providing access for masons to work at height safely. Ventilation shafts and smaller passageways were constructed concurrently with the main chambers. Workers carved shafts at precise angles, aligning them astronomically with specific stars. These shafts required careful measurement and reinforcement to ensure they remained open, structurally sound, and properly aligned with the intended celestial targets. In some pyramids, shafts were initially blocked during construction and later opened or extended during final stages, illustrating sophisticated sequencing and coordination. Teams were subdivided into smaller crews, each with defined responsibilities. Stonecutters shaped blocks to exact dimensions, masons fit them into place. Haulers transported materials along ramps, and support crews prepared tools, managed supplies, and maintained worker housing. Scribes and overseers documented progress, recording block dimensions, placement location, and labor effort. This documentation ensured continuity, minimized errors, and allowed large-scale projects to proceed smoothly over decades. Construction sequences were carefully timed to optimize efficiency and resource allocation. Seasonal labor from agricultural regions supplemented permanent workers, particularly during the Nile's inundation. Food, water, and medical care were provided at nearby worker villages, ensuring physical well-being and continuity of work. Bakers, brewers, and craftsmen supplied essential services, while carpenters and toolmakers maintained sledges, levers, and chisels. The integration of labor, logistics, and engineering enabled continuous progress even over decades-long construction schedules. Once internal chambers were completed, final layers of casing stones were added to the pyramid's exterior. Polished Tura limestone was carefully fitted and aligned to create smooth faces, reflecting sunlight and emphasizing the pyramid's symbolic connection to the sun. During this stage, external ramps and scaffolding allowed workers to raise stones to the upper levels. Precise finishing ensured that the pyramid maintained geometric accuracy, structural integrity, and visual brilliance. In summary, the construction of internal chambers and passageways required detailed organization, sequential planning, and careful execution. Teams of skilled masons, laborers, and support personnel coordinated every step, from quarrying and transporting massive stones to precise placement within chambers and passageways. Ramps, levers, scaffolding, and astronomical alignment facilitated the building of complex structures, while documentation, logistics, and worker welfare ensured sustained productivity over decades. This combination of engineering, administration, and labor management allowed the ancient Egyptians to create pyramids of unparalleled precision, stability, and enduring symbolic significance. The spiritual and ceremonial functions of pyramids were as meticulously organized as their construction. Mortuary rituals formed a central component of the pyramid complex, ensuring that the pharaoh's journey to the afterlife was properly facilitated according to religious principles. Mortuary temples, located at the base of the pyramid, served as the primary site for these rituals, where priests performed daily offerings of food, drink, and incense on behalf of the deceased king. These offerings were intended to sustain the pharaoh's ka, or life force, and maintain the connection between the living and the divine. The mortuary temple included altars, chapels, and offering tables arranged to maximize ritual efficiency and symbolic meaning. Priests followed precise liturgies derived from sacred texts, including pyramid texts during the Old Kingdom and coffin texts in later periods. Rituals often involved recitations of spells, hymns to the gods, and symbolic gestures designed to protect the pharaoh and enable his resurrection. Offerings of bread, beer, meat, and oils were presented daily, while periodic larger ceremonies marked significant dates in the Egyptian calendar, linking the pyramid to broader religious cycles and seasonal patterns. The causeway connecting the mortuary temple to the valley temple was integral to ceremonial practice. This long, paved corridor allowed processions to move between the Nile, where offerings and materials arrived, and the pyramid itself. Statues, stelae, and ceremonial decorations along the causeway reinforced the sacred function of the complex and emphasized the pharaoh's divine authority. Priests and attendants coordinated these processions, ensuring that each ritual followed established protocols and that offerings were properly transferred and stored for use in ongoing ceremonies. Valley temples, located near the Nile, served as entry points for the pyramid's ceremonial and logistical activities. Boats carrying food, drink, and ritual items docked at these temples, where priests and workers unloaded, prepared, and organized supplies. These temples also functioned as staging areas for ritual enactments, purification ceremonies, and the preparation of sacred objects. Their design facilitated both practical and spiritual functions, linking the pyramid to the river, the surrounding landscape, and the larger religious framework of the kingdom. The organization of priests and attendants reflected a structured hierarchy. High priests oversaw all ritual activities, ensured compliance with sacred texts, and coordinated subordinate priests and temple staff. Scribes documented ritual schedules, offerings, and expenditures, maintaining records that guaranteed continuity and adherence to tradition. Craftsmen and support personnel produced ritual implements, incense, ceremonial vessels, and clothing for priests, ensuring that all aspects of worship could proceed without interruption. Within the pyramid itself, internal chambers and passageways were designed to complement ritual practice. The alignment of burial chambers, ventilation shafts, and passageways corresponded to celestial bodies and cosmological principles. This ensured that the pharaoh's soul could ascend to the heavens, while the physical presence of offerings, symbolic artifacts, and sacred inscriptions provided ongoing support for the journey. Even false passages and concealed corridors were integrated into the overall ritual schema, emphasizing protection, secrecy, and cosmic alignment. The integration of mortuary rituals with construction and daily operation reflects the Egyptians' holistic worldview. Each element, from stone selection to chamber alignment to temple offerings, served both practical and spiritual purposes. Daily maintenance of offerings and periodic ceremonies reinforced the pyramid's role as a living religious monument, linking human labor, divine kingship, and cosmic order. This system allowed the pharaoh's presence to endure, ensuring that the monument functioned as both tomb and sacred instrument for millennia. In summary, mortuary rituals, offerings, and temple operations were central to the function of pyramid complexes. Priests, attendants, and scribes maintained a precise and continuous cycle of worship, ensuring the pharaoh's spiritual sustenance and reinforcing the connection between the living, the dead, and the divine. The design of internal chambers, causeways, and valley temples facilitated these rituals, integrating physical construction with religious practice. Through these carefully managed ceremonies, pyramids operated not only as tombs but as enduring centers of spiritual, cultural, and political life in ancient Egypt. Archaeological investigations have revealed that pyramid construction relied on large, organized worker communities, often referred to as worker villages, located near the pyramid sites. These villages housed thousands of laborers, artisans, and support staff and were essential to sustaining construction over decades. Evidence from the Giza Plateau, particularly the village near the Great Pyramid, demonstrates a sophisticated system of housing, nutrition, and medical care that allowed workers to maintain productivity while undertaking physically demanding labor. Housing in worker villages consisted of mud brick barracks arranged in rows, providing shelter for laborers and their families. The layout suggests careful planning with streets and communal spaces facilitating movement, social interaction, and coordination of work. Excavations reveal that some buildings were multi-roomed, including areas for cooking, sleeping, and storage of personal belongings. These accommodations were functional but sufficient to protect inhabitants from the harsh desert environment, including extreme heat during the day and cold nights. Food and nutrition were critical for sustaining laborers who hauled multi-ton stones, quarried materials, and maintained construction sites. Archaeological evidence indicates that workers were provided with large quantities of bread, often supplemented by meat, fish, vegetables, and beer. Animal bones discovered near worker settlements suggest consumption of cattle, sheep, and goats, while fish from the Nile provided additional protein. Large-scale bakeries and breweries were present near the pyramids, producing thousands of loaves of bread and liters of beer daily to feed the workforce. This combination of carbohydrates, protein, and hydration supported the intense physical demands of construction labor. Medical care in worker villages further ensured labor sustainability. Skeletal remains indicate that injuries, including fractures, joint wear, and repetitive stress conditions, were treated and often healed, suggesting attention to recovery and rehabilitation. Some workers received splints or bandages, while others were provided with rest and nutritional support to aid healing. The presence of healed injuries demonstrates that the workforce was valued and cared for, enabling laborers to continue contributing to construction over extended periods. Daily life in worker villages included both work and social organization. Teams of laborers were divided into crews, often named after animals or deities and coordinated by overseers and foremen. Each crew had defined tasks, such as stone cutting, hauling, or placement, allowing efficient specialization. Communal dining areas, workshops, and craft spaces indicate that workers engaged in various activities beyond physical labor, including tool maintenance, pottery production, and preparation of ritual items for temple and burial activities. Logistical organization extended beyond the village itself. Water was supplied via wells or transported from the Nile, while storage areas held grain, dried goods, and other staples. Workshops produced sledges, ropes, wooden levers, and copper tools, essential for quarrying and construction. Scribes documented work progress, labor rotation, and material consumption, creating a management system that integrated human resources with construction requirements. Seasonal laborers from agricultural regions supplemented the permanent workforce, particularly during the Nile's inundation, when farming was impossible. This rotation ensured a consistent labor supply without disrupting agricultural production. The archaeological record also suggests cultural and religious aspects integrated into village life. Small shrines and ceremonial spaces within worker settlements indicate participation in rituals and offerings, likely intended to maintain divine favor for the pharaoh and protect the workforce. Graffiti, inscriptions, and personal items suggest that laborers were aware of the symbolic importance of their work and participated, even indirectly, in the religious significance of the pyramids. In summary, pyramid worker villages were highly organized communities, providing housing, food, medical care, and logistical support for tens of thousands of laborers. Archaeological evidence demonstrates that the ancient Egyptians created sustainable living and working conditions to maintain productivity and morale. Daily life combined labor, social interaction, ritual practice, and careful oversight, reflecting a complex system that integrated human welfare with monumental construction goals. These villages were an indispensable component of pyramid building, illustrating the advanced planning, administration, and societal organization that enabled the creation of enduring monuments. The construction of pyramids was not a year-round endeavor for the entire workforce. It followed a carefully organized seasonal schedule that maximized efficiency while aligning with agricultural cycles. The annual inundation of the Nile, which occurred roughly between June and September, played a central role in determining labor availability. During this period, farming was impossible because fields were submerged, freeing large numbers of agricultural workers to participate in construction projects. Pharaohs and overseers leveraged this natural cycle to recruit seasonal labor, supplementing the permanent workforce residing in nearby villages. Permanent crews consisted of skilled masons, stonecutters, carpenters, engineers, and supervisors who worked continuously to maintain progress on specialized tasks. These core workers ensured consistency in techniques, quality, and measurements across decades-long construction schedules. Seasonal laborers, often numbering in the tens of thousands, were integrated into larger teams responsible for hauling, quarrying, and transporting blocks. Labor was subdivided into smaller crews, typically consisting of 20 to 50 workers, each with defined tasks and a foreman overseeing coordination and productivity. Some evidence suggests that teams were identified by names, often associated with animals or symbolic terms, fostering a sense of identity, organization, and motivation. Daily work schedules were likely structured around environmental conditions and human endurance. Laborers began early in the morning, taking advantage of cooler temperatures, with midday breaks to avoid the extreme heat of the desert sun. Tools, sledges, ropes, and ramps were maintained by dedicated support crews, ensuring uninterrupted workflow. Rotation systems allowed workers to rest, eat, and receive medical care, preventing exhaustion and reducing the risk of accidents. Villages included bakeries, breweries, and storage areas to supply thousands of workers with bread, beer, and protein sources, supporting both physical stamina and overall health. The transportation of stone blocks exemplified the coordination required in workforce management. Limestone blocks weighing approximately 2.3 to 2.5 tons were hauled by teams of 10 to 20 men using sledges, often lubricated with water to reduce friction on desert sand. Granite blocks, sometimes exceeding 25 tons, required larger crews, coordinated timing, and specialized wooden levers to maneuver into position. Experimental archaeology confirms that these methods were practical, demonstrating the Egyptians' ability to mobilize labor, tools, and logistics effectively. Supervisors monitored the pace of work, ensuring that seasonal surges in labor were efficiently integrated with permanent crews' ongoing tasks. Workforce efficiency also relied on detailed documentation and oversight. Scribes recorded the number of workers, the blocks moved, dimensions of quarried stones, and daily progress. This record-keeping allowed project managers to plan rotations, anticipate material needs, and maintain continuity even over multi-decade construction periods. Labor was assigned according to skill level, ensuring that specialized tasks, such as corbelled chamber construction or precise alignment of internal shafts, were performed by experienced masons while unskilled workers focused on hauling and preparation. Beyond construction, seasonal laborers also participated in maintaining infrastructure and performing ancillary tasks. Roads, ramps, and causeways required continuous upkeep to support heavy traffic of stone blocks. Water supply, food distribution, and storage facilities needed constant monitoring and replenishment. By integrating these support roles into the seasonal workforce, Egyptian administrators maximized efficiency and ensured that construction proceeded without interruption. The rotation of labor between agricultural work and pyramid construction created a mutually beneficial system. Farmers provided seasonal labor when their fields were underwater, gaining wages, rations, or symbolic participation in religiously significant projects. The state, in turn, benefited from a predictable workforce available during peak construction periods, allowing large-scale projects to proceed without exhausting local resources or permanently diverting the population from food production. In summary, seasonal work cycles, labor rotations, and workforce management were central to the success of pyramid construction. The ancient Egyptians created a highly organized system combining permanent skilled crews with seasonal labor, careful scheduling, and logistical oversight. Daily routines, task specialization, resource provision, and supervision ensured that tens of thousands of workers could construct massive monuments over decades. This integration of natural cycles, human labor, and administrative planning exemplifies the Egyptians' mastery of social organization and project management, enabling the construction of enduring pyramids that remain among the world's most remarkable engineering achievements. Once the internal chambers, passageways, and core blocks of a pyramid were complete, the focus shifted to the outer casing and final finishing. The polished limestone casing served both functional and symbolic purposes. Functionally, the casing protected the softer core blocks from erosion, wind, and sand abrasion. Symbolically, the highly reflective surface connected the pyramid to the sun god Ra, allowing sunlight to glint off the surface and create a luminous appearance visible across the surrounding desert. This radiance emphasized the pharaoh's divine status and reinforced the spiritual significance of the monument. Casing stones were quarried with precision to achieve uniformity in size, smoothness, and fit. Each block was carefully shaped and polished, with some Tura limestone blocks cut to weights of approximately 2.5 tons and smooth enough to reflect light. Workers used copper chisels, dolerite hammers, and abrasive sand to achieve the desired finish. The precision of placement was critical. Even minor gaps could compromise structural integrity and aesthetic continuity. Blocks were fitted edge to edge, forming straight lines and flush surfaces that maintained the geometric perfection of the pyramid's faces. Ramps and scaffolding facilitated the placement of casing stones at increasing heights. Straight ramps extending from the base, zigzag ramps along the sides, or spiral ramps circling the pyramid's exterior allowed workers to transport stones to the upper layers efficiently. Teams of laborers hauled sledges along these ramps, coordinating movements to avoid collisions and maintain precise angles. Levers, ropes, and wooden supports helped maneuver stones into exact positions. Supervisors ensured that each stone was aligned both horizontally and vertically, using plumb lines, leveling tools, and sighting along the edges of previously placed blocks. Verification of alignment was a meticulous process. The Great Pyramid, for example, is aligned to the cardinal points with remarkable precision, deviating only a few minutes of arc. To achieve this, Egyptian architects likely used sighting instruments such as Merkhut's plumb lines combined with alignment markers to determine true north, south, east, and west. Surveys were conducted at multiple stages to ensure that corners and faces remained straight and that the pyramid maintained a uniform slope of approximately 51.5 degrees for Khufu's pyramid. This precision required continuous monitoring, adjustment, and coordination among skilled workers and overseers. The final finishing also included the installation of capstones, often called pyramidions. While few original pyramidions survive, evidence suggests that they were made from harder stone or gilded to maximize reflective properties. Capstones were precisely shaped and fitted at the pyramid's apex, symbolizing the connection between the pharaoh and the divine and completing the visual and structural geometry of the monument. Construction of subsidiary pyramids, such as those for queens or high-ranking family members, followed similar procedures. Although smaller in scale, these pyramids employed casing stones, ramps, and precise alignment methods. They complemented the main pyramid's visual and symbolic impact, reinforcing the coherence of the entire complex. Mortuary temples, causeways, and associated ceremonial spaces were finished concurrently, ensuring that each component of the pyramid complex was integrated both functionally and aesthetically. Polishing and inspection continued after the casing was in place. Workers checked for uneven surfaces, misaligned blocks, or gaps, making minor adjustments where necessary. Finishing touches extended beyond the visible surfaces. Internal chambers, passageways, and shafts were cleaned, passages cleared of debris, and ventilation shafts verified to align correctly. This attention to detail ensured both the structural stability and symbolic efficacy of the pyramid, reflecting the Egyptians' commitment to precision in monumental construction. In summary, the placement of casing stones, final finishing, and alignment verification combined engineering skill, logistical coordination, and symbolic purpose. Polished limestone surfaces, precise block placement, and astronomical alignment transformed the pyramid from a structural core into a radiant monument visible across the desert. Ramps, levers, plumb lines, and surveying techniques enabled workers to achieve geometric perfection, while oversight by skilled masons and supervisors ensured continuity and accuracy. The final construction stages illustrate the integration of labor, material science, and ceremonial intent, completing a complex process that transformed raw stone into enduring monuments of Egyptian civilization. Inside pyramids and their associated mortuary temples, artifacts, inscriptions, and symbolic elements played a central role in connecting the physical structure to spiritual beliefs. These elements were carefully designed, placed, and curated to ensure that the pharaoh's journey to the afterlife was both protected and facilitated according to religious tradition. Funerary objects, ritual implements, and inscriptions provided guidance, protection, and sustenance for the deceased king's ka or life force. In the king's chamber of the Great Pyramid, the sarcophagus itself is made of red granite, precisely carved to accommodate the pharaoh's body. Its placement in the chamber demonstrates both structural foresight and ritual significance. Surrounding chambers and passages often contained offering vessels, jars, and storage spaces for food and drink intended to sustain the pharaoh in the afterlife. Although looting over millennia removed many of the original artifacts, archaeological studies and ancient texts indicate that these provisions were integral to the pyramid's function. Inscriptions within pyramids, particularly in later periods such as the Middle Kingdom, were extensive and highly symbolic. Pyramid texts etched into the walls of burial chambers contained spells, prayers, and instructions designed to protect the king and guide his soul through the underworld. These texts referenced gods, cosmic principles, and ritual acts, creating a spiritual roadmap that complemented the physical architecture. The inscriptions also served as a record of royal authority, legitimizing the pharaoh's divine status and connecting the monument to both past and future generations. Mortuary temples contained statues, stelae, and ritual objects that reinforced the pharaoh's presence and power. Statues often depicted the king in idealized form, emphasizing eternal youth, strength, and divine connection. Stelae inscribed with dedications and ritual instructions provided focal points for offerings, prayers, and ceremonies. Tools, vessels, and ceremonial clothing were stored and maintained by temple staff, allowing daily rituals to continue without interruption. These artifacts were carefully arranged to facilitate priests' work and to maintain the symbolic cohesion of the pyramid complex. Symbolic alignment extended beyond objects and inscriptions to spatial organization. Internal chambers, corridors, and passageways were oriented astronomically to correspond with stars associated with the afterlife, such as Orion, representing Osiris, and circumpolar stars, symbolizing eternity. This integration of celestial alignment with architectural and ritual elements ensured that the pharaoh's soul could ascend, guided by both physical and symbolic markers. Even the placement of offering tables, altars, and ritual implements within the temples adhered to precise alignments and distances, reflecting a holistic understanding of sacred space. Artifacts discovered near pyramid complexes, including tools, ceremonial pottery, and workers' personal items, provide additional context for how these sacred spaces functioned. Tools used in construction were sometimes ritually deposited or marked, emphasizing the sacred nature of labor contributing to the pyramid. Pottery and food remains indicate provisions for both living participants in ceremonies and the symbolic sustenance of the deceased. Personal items, including ornaments and amulets, suggest that workers and priests were also embedded within the spiritual framework, connecting human activity to divine purpose. Together, artifacts, inscriptions, and symbolic elements created a network of meaning within pyramid complexes. They integrated construction, ritual, and celestial alignment into a unified system, ensuring that the pharaoh's tomb functioned not merely as a physical container for the body, but as an enduring instrument of spiritual continuity. This careful orchestration allowed the pyramids to serve simultaneously as monuments of human achievement, centers of religious practice, and repositories of cultural memory. In summary, pyramid-associated artifacts, inscriptions, and symbolic elements were essential to both the practical and spiritual functions of the complex. Sarcophagi, offering vessels, ritual objects, and inscriptions connected the pharaoh to divine forces and guided his journey to the afterlife. Temples, altars, and ceremonial arrangements facilitated ongoing worship, while spatial and celestial alignments reinforced the sacred nature of the monuments. The integration of these elements with construction, labor, and material planning illustrates the Egyptians' sophisticated ability to merge engineering, administration, and religious symbolism in the creation of enduring pyramids. The construction of large pyramids began to decline following the peak of the Old Kingdom, particularly after the 4th and 5th dynasties. Several interrelated factors contributed to this transition, reflecting changes in political power, economic resources, religious practice, and administrative priorities. As dynasties shifted and the centralized authority of the pharaoh fluctuated, the immense resource investment required for monumental pyramids became less sustainable. During the 5th dynasty, pyramids continued to be built, but at smaller scales and with more modest materials. Pharaohs such as Userkaf, Sahir, and Unas constructed pyramids with limestone cores and fewer granite elements, reflecting both practical and economic constraints. The mortuary temples continued to function, and pyramid texts began appearing on walls, illustrating a shift toward spiritual and ritual emphasis rather than sheer monumental scale. The height and volume of pyramids decreased, signaling adaptation to limited resources, changes in labor organization, and evolving religious priorities. By the 6th dynasty, pyramids were often smaller and more hastily constructed. Pharaohs such as Teti, Pepi I, and Pepi II commissioned pyramids that, while still symbolically important, lacked the precision and scale of the Giza monuments. Workers' villages and logistical systems persisted, but the reduced size of pyramids allowed for less extensive infrastructure. Administrative records suggest that economic pressures, including maintaining large estates and funding other state projects, constrained the ability to dedicate vast labor and materials to pyramid construction. The first intermediate period, following the collapse of centralized authority at the end of the Old Kingdom, marked a significant shift in tomb architecture. Political fragmentation and decentralization meant that pharaohs no longer had access to the labor and resources necessary for monumental pyramids. Instead, regional rulers and local elites favored smaller, rock-cut tombs in the form of mastabas or cliffs. These tombs, while still incorporating religious symbolism, offering chambers and funerary inscriptions, reflected practical adaptation to changing political and economic conditions. During the Middle Kingdom, pyramid construction persisted but adapted to new circumstances. Pharaohs such as Amenhotep I and Senusret I built pyramids at Lisht and Dashur that incorporated mud brick cores with limestone casing, a less resource-intensive method than the massive stone cores of the Old Kingdom. Internal chambers and passageways remained complex, and mortuary temples continued to facilitate rituals, but the scale was deliberately reduced. Pyramid texts evolved into coffin texts, extending funerary spells to broader segments of society, indicating a democratization of afterlife beliefs beyond the pharaoh. By the New Kingdom, pyramid construction had largely ceased. Pharaohs favored rock-cut tombs in the Valley of the Kings, reflecting changes in religious practice, political centralization, and security concerns. Tombs were constructed in hidden valleys with elaborate corridors, chambers, and wall paintings, providing both protection from looting and detailed ritual spaces for the deceased. Although these tombs were different in form, they retained the spiritual and symbolic functions of earlier pyramids, demonstrating continuity in religious ideology even as architectural methods evolved. Factors influencing the decline of pyramid construction included resource limitations, changing labor dynamics, political instability, and evolving religious beliefs. The immense cost of transporting massive stones, maintaining worker villages, and providing sustenance over decades became increasingly impractical. Simultaneously, religious texts and practices evolved to emphasize spiritual protection and ritual observance over monumental scale, allowing smaller structures or rock-cut tombs to fulfill similar functions. Despite the decline in pyramid construction, earlier pyramids remained influential. They continued to serve as religious landmarks, points of pilgrimage, and symbols of divine kingship. Later rulers often drew inspiration from Old and Middle Kingdom monuments, incorporating elements of pyramid architecture, alignment, and symbolism into new tomb designs. Even as techniques changed, the conceptual framework established by pyramid builders integrating geometry, astronomy, ritual, and labor organization remained a guiding principle in Egyptian funerary architecture. In summary, the decline of pyramid construction reflects a combination of political, economic, and religious factors. While monumental pyramids became less feasible, the principles of design, spiritual significance, and administrative coordination persisted in smaller pyramids and rock-cut tombs. Changes in dynasties, central authority, and labor organization shaped the evolution of Egyptian tomb architecture, demonstrating adaptability and continuity in cultural and religious practices even as the scale and methods of construction transformed over centuries. After the decline of pyramid construction and the eventual desertion of surrounding settlements, the pyramids of Egypt remained as silent monuments across the centuries. Their immense size and striking geometry ensured that they continued to capture the attention of local populations, travelers, and later, scholars from distant lands. Over time, the knowledge of their original function and construction methods was partially lost, creating a mixture of myths, speculation, and fascination that would persist into modern times. During the classical period, Greek and Roman historians documented the pyramids. Herodotus, writing in the 5th century BCE, provided one of the earliest detailed accounts of the Great Pyramid of Giza, describing its size, labor organization, and purpose as a tomb for Pharaoh Khufu. While some of his numbers were exaggerated or inaccurate, his work reflects the enduring fascination of foreign travelers and the attention given to monumental Egyptian architecture. Other writers, including Diodorus Siculus and Strabo, recorded descriptions of pyramids and associated temples, noting both their scale and the enigmatic techniques used to construct them. In medieval times, pyramids remained prominent landmarks, though much of the technical knowledge regarding their construction had been lost. Local populations often attributed mystical or religious significance to the structures, sometimes associating them with biblical narratives or legendary kings. Travelers and traders passing through Egypt documented their observations in manuscripts and travelogues, preserving descriptions of the monuments even as their precise purpose became obscured. The Renaissance and early modern periods saw renewed interest in pyramids, with European scholars and explorers conducting more systematic studies. Cartographers created maps of the Giza Plateau, and early sketches and measurements attempted to quantify their dimensions and alignments. Despite the lack of modern tools, these records contributed to the gradual accumulation of empirical knowledge about pyramid geometry, construction, and orientation. Modern archaeological study began in the 19th century, with expeditions by scholars such as Carl Richard Lepsius and later by British, French, and Egyptian teams. Excavation techniques, surveying tools, and recording methods allowed for detailed measurements, identification of construction sequences, and analysis of worker villages, quarries, and associated structures. These studies confirmed many aspects of earlier historical accounts, while also providing precise data on block dimensions, material sources, labor organization, and construction techniques. 20th and 21st century archaeology has continued to expand understanding of pyramid construction and function. Discoveries such as the worker village at Hayt el Garab, the remains of ramps, and detailed analysis of casing stones and internal chambers have clarified how thousands of workers coordinated complex tasks over decades. Radiocarbon dating, chemical analysis of mortar, and geological sourcing of stone blocks have further refined knowledge about material origins and construction timelines. Studies of inscriptions, reliefs, and pyramid texts have revealed the symbolic, religious, and ritual dimensions of pyramid complexes, providing insight into the integration of engineering, labor, and belief systems. Today, pyramids remain active sites of research, conservation, and cultural heritage. Advanced technologies including ground-penetrating radar, 3D scanning, and remote sensing allow archaeologists to investigate structural features, hidden chambers, and construction anomalies without invasive excavation. Preservation efforts ensure that the pyramids withstand environmental erosion, tourism impact, and human interference, maintaining their presence as enduring monuments of human ingenuity. In addition to scientific study, pyramids continue to inspire global fascination, influencing art, architecture, literature, and popular culture. Their scale, precision, and symbolic resonance exemplify the achievements of ancient Egyptian civilization, while ongoing research demonstrates the sophistication of logistical planning, labor management, and engineering employed over 4 millennia ago. The rediscovery and systematic study of pyramids illustrate both the enduring physical presence of these monuments and their lasting impact on human understanding of history, culture, and technology. In summary, the pyramids were gradually rediscovered and documented over centuries, moving from local landmarks to objects of scientific investigation. Classical writers, medieval travelers, early modern explorers, and modern archaeologists have each contributed to understanding their construction, function, and symbolism. Through systematic study, including excavation, inscription analysis, and material testing, researchers have reconstructed the complex interplay of labor, materials, and ritual that created these enduring monuments. Today, pyramids remain both archaeological treasures and symbols of ancient Egyptian civilization's lasting legacy. Modern engineering and experimental archaeology have provided valuable insights into the techniques used to build the pyramids, confirming the plausibility of methods recorded by historians and inferred from archaeological evidence. Researchers have studied the movement of massive stones, ramp construction, lifting mechanisms, and workforce coordination to understand how ancient Egyptians could construct monuments of such scale without modern machinery. Experimental archaeologists have successfully replicated methods of transporting and placing limestone and granite blocks. Engineering studies also emphasize the importance of ramps in construction. Straight ramps, zigzag ramps, and spiral ramps around the pyramid's exterior were plausible methods for raising stones to higher levels. Ramp length, slope angle, and material composition were critical to efficiency. Long, gently sloping ramps reduced effort but required greater material and labor, while steeper or spiraled ramps minimized length but demanded careful coordination to prevent accidents. Archaeological evidence, including remnants of ramp foundations and traces of stone wear on the desert, supports the use of these techniques. Precision measurement and alignment were key engineering challenges. The Great Pyramid sides are nearly perfectly aligned to the cardinal points, deviating only a few minutes of arc. Researchers suggest that ancient surveyors used simple tools such as merkits, plumb lines, sighting rods, and gnomons to achieve these alignments. By observing star positions, measuring shadows, and using repeated sight lines, builders maintained orientation throughout the decades-long construction process. Internal chamber placement, slope angles, and overall geometry were similarly verified using incremental measurements and standardized block dimensions. The engineering of internal chambers, corbelled ceilings, and relieving chambers demonstrates advanced understanding of load distribution. Granite blocks in the king's chamber, weighing tens of tons, were positioned atop successive layers of limestone and granite to transfer weight away from sensitive floor and wall areas. Structural analysis shows that these arrangements effectively prevented collapse, confirming that ancient engineers understood basic principles of stress distribution even without formal mathematical theory. Experimental studies have also explored workforce efficiency and logistics. By simulating rotations of workers, material transport schedules, and daily work routines, researchers have demonstrated that large-scale construction could be sustained with a combination of permanent, skilled crews and seasonal labor from agricultural regions. Worker villages provided food, medical care, and rest periods, creating a sustainable system for decades-long projects. Coordination of teams, oversight by foremen, and record-keeping by scribes ensured continuity, minimized errors, and allowed for the precise placement of millions of blocks. Modern analysis of pyramid quarries further clarifies material sourcing and cutting techniques. Limestone from Tura and Nosara was chosen for casing, while local Giza limestone formed core blocks. Granite from Aswan was transported hundreds of kilometers along the Nile. Archaeologists have identified tool marks consistent with copper chisels and dolerite pounding stones, confirming the methods of shaping both soft and hard stones. These studies provide tangible evidence of the integration of material science, logistics, and labor coordination in pyramid construction. In summary, modern engineering and experimental archaeology validate the construction techniques used in pyramid building. Transport of multi-ton blocks, ramp design, precise measurement, load distribution, and workforce management were all achievable with available resources, simple tools, and effective planning. Experiments demonstrate the feasibility of moving massive stones, constructing complex internal chambers, and achieving precise alignments, confirming that the monumental achievements of ancient Egyptian civilization were grounded in practical engineering knowledge and highly organized labor systems. The pyramids of Egypt were far more than tombs. They were powerful symbols of royal authority, religious belief, and cultural identity. Their geometric form, monumental scale, and precise orientation reflected fundamental aspects of Egyptian cosmology and the pharaoh's role as an intermediary between the gods and humanity. From the earliest dynasties, pyramids symbolized the connection between the earthly realm and the divine, serving as instruments for the pharaoh's ascent to the afterlife and as enduring expressions of political and spiritual power. The pyramid's shape itself held deep symbolic significance. The triangular faces converging toward a single apex represented the rays of the sun, linking the pharaoh with Ra, the sun god. The alignment with cardinal points reinforced the perception of cosmic order, integrating the king's tomb with the movements of the heavens. Internally, the orientation of chambers, shafts, and passageways often corresponded to stars and constellations associated with death, resurrection, and eternity, further emphasizing the pharaoh's journey from the mortal world to the divine cosmos. Mortuary temples and pyramid complexes were centers of ongoing religious practice. Daily offerings, ritual ceremonies, and recitations of sacred texts maintained the pharaoh's spiritual presence and reinforced the legitimacy of the ruling dynasty. These practices underscored the pyramid's role as living monuments, where human activity continually sustained the spiritual and cultural significance of the structure. By linking architecture with ritual, the pyramids functioned as focal points for societal cohesion, reinforcing shared beliefs and values across generations. The influence of pyramids extended beyond Egypt, inspiring architectural forms in neighboring cultures and later civilizations. Nubian pyramids, built in regions south of Egypt, adopted similar geometric forms, though often on a smaller scale and with steeper slopes. In the Mediterranean world, monumental architecture and funerary structures drew conceptual inspiration from Egyptian pyramids, emphasizing the integration of symbolic geometry, ceremonial function, and visual prominence. The cultural resonance of pyramids persisted throughout history, influencing both artistic representation and architectural thought. Even within Egypt, The symbolic significance of pyramids continued after the decline of large-scale pyramid construction. Rock-cut tombs in the Valley of the Kings preserve the ideological and spiritual principles of pyramids, incorporating internal corridors, ceremonial chambers, and symbolic artwork to guide the deceased pharaoh's journey. The association of tomb architecture with celestial alignment, ritual provision, and divine protection endured, demonstrating the lasting impact of pyramid culture on Egyptian funerary practices. Pyramids also shaped collective memory and identity. They became markers of dynastic legitimacy, monuments of state power, and repositories of historical knowledge. Inscriptions, reliefs, and surviving artifacts served as records of technological achievement, religious practice, and societal organization. Even after millennia, the pyramid's presence reinforced a sense of continuity with the past, connecting successive generations to the accomplishments of early Egyptian civilization. Modern appreciation of pyramids reflects their cultural, religious, and architectural significance. Scholars, architects, and engineers study the pyramids not only for their technical achievements, but also for their symbolic and societal impact. Museums, educational programs, and heritage initiatives highlight the integration of labor, logistics, religion, and artistry that characterized pyramid construction. Public fascination with pyramids demonstrates the enduring power of these structures as cultural icons and symbols of human ingenuity. In summary, the pyramids were central to Egyptian culture, religion, and identity. Their geometric form, celestial alignment, and monumental scale symbolized the pharaoh's divine role, while internal and external structures facilitated ongoing ritual practice. The influence of pyramids extended to neighboring regions and later civilizations, leaving a lasting imprint on architectural tradition. By combining religious symbolism, societal function, and technological achievement, pyramids embodied the integration of human labor, cosmic understanding, and cultural continuity, ensuring their enduring significance across millennia. The pyramids, exposed to thousands of years of natural and human activity, have undergone significant changes due to erosion, weathering, and human interference. Their limestone casing, once smooth and reflective, has largely worn away, leaving the rough core blocks visible today. Wind, sandstorms, and temperature fluctuations in the desert have contributed to surface erosion, gradually softening edges and altering the original appearance of the monuments. Salt crystallization, caused by groundwater and humidity fluctuations, further degrades stone surfaces, particularly in lower layers and exposed areas. Human activity has also impacted pyramid preservation. In antiquity, stones from casing and mortuary temples were often removed for reuse in other constructions, reducing the pyramid's original finish. Looting of burial chambers and associated artifacts over centuries has stripped many pyramids of their intended interior contents. Modern tourism, while important for cultural appreciation and economic support, introduces challenges including physical wear, vibration from foot traffic, and inadvertent damage to surfaces and archaeological features. Efforts to preserve and restore the pyramids have been ongoing since the 19th century, with increasingly sophisticated methods applied in the 20th and 21st centuries. Archaeologists and conservators conduct detailed surveys of structural integrity, mapping erosion patterns, cracks, and displaced stones. Restoration involves careful replacement or stabilization of damaged blocks, reinforcement of internal chambers, and protection of vulnerable surfaces from wind, sand, and human impact. Modern conservation also incorporates preventive measures, such as controlling visitor access, installing barriers, and managing environmental exposure. Scientific studies contribute to preservation strategies. Chemical analysis of stone composition helps identify areas at risk from salt crystallization or chemical erosion. Ground-penetrating radar and 3D scanning provide detailed maps of internal structures, revealing weaknesses or shifts in the stone that require attention. These technologies allow for non-invasive monitoring and targeted interventions, preserving both the pyramid's structural stability and historical authenticity. Environmental factors, such as groundwater rise, temperature extremes, and desert winds, continue to pose challenges. Conservation teams monitor microclimates around pyramid complexes, employing drainage systems and protective measures to reduce erosion and stone deterioration. Sand accumulation around lower layers is periodically cleared to prevent pressure on foundations and to reveal archaeological features. These efforts are crucial to maintaining the pyramids for future study, tourism, and cultural appreciation. International collaboration plays a significant role in preservation. UNESCO and Egyptian authorities coordinate research, restoration, and management projects, ensuring that conservation practices adhere to both scientific standards and cultural heritage guidelines. Training programs for local archaeologists and conservationists help maintain expertise in long-term preservation techniques. Public education initiatives also foster awareness of the pyramid's historical and cultural value, encouraging responsible interaction with these ancient monuments. Despite these challenges, the pyramids have remained remarkably resilient. Their construction, combining massive stone blocks, precise engineering, and careful planning, has allowed them to withstand millennia of environmental and human pressures. Restoration and conservation efforts aim not to replace the original materials entirely, but to stabilize, protect, and maintain the integrity of the structures, preserving both their physical presence and symbolic significance. In summary, pyramid preservation requires a multifaceted approach addressing natural erosion, human impact, and environmental challenges. Restoration, monitoring, and preventive conservation ensure structural stability, maintain historical authenticity, and allow continued study and appreciation. Technological advancements, scientific research, and international collaboration enhance preservation efforts, safeguarding these monumental achievements of ancient Egyptian civilization for future generations. The pyramid's endurance is a testament not only to ancient engineering and organization, but also to modern dedication to cultural heritage and historical continuity. The construction of the pyramids represents one of the most extraordinary achievements of ancient Egyptian civilization, combining engineering skill, administrative organization, religious devotion, and societal coordination. These monumental structures, rising from the desert plains with precise geometric form and astronomical alignment, served multiple functions that integrated the physical, spiritual, and cultural life of Egypt. From the earliest dynasties, pyramids were conceived as tombs for the pharaohs, designed to protect the body, preserve the soul, and facilitate the journey to the afterlife. Core blocks of limestone and granite were quarried locally or transported over long distances, shaped with copper chisels and dolerite hammers, and placed with meticulous attention to alignment, slope, and fit. The massive labor involved required tens of thousands of workers, including permanent skilled masons, engineers, and seasonal laborers drawn from agricultural communities during the Nile's inundation. Worker villages provided housing, food, medical care, and logistical support, creating a sustainable system for decades-long construction projects. Labor was highly organized. Crews worked in teams, supervised by foremen and scribes who recorded progress, material consumption, and work assignments. Ramps, sledges, levers, and scaffolding allowed workers to transport and position multi-ton stones with remarkable precision. Seasonal rotations, daily schedules, and provisioning systems ensured efficiency and continuity, allowing massive pyramids like Khufu's Great Pyramid to rise over 2 decades of coordinated effort. Beyond the physical construction, the pyramids were deeply intertwined with religious and cultural practice. Mortuary temples, valley temples, and causeways facilitated daily offerings, ritual ceremonies, and recitations of sacred texts, maintaining the pharaoh's spiritual presence. Inscriptions, including pyramid texts and later coffin texts, provided guidance and protection for the king's soul. Artifacts offering vessels, statues, and ceremonial implements reinforced both symbolic and functional aspects, connecting the human labor of construction to divine purpose. Celestial alignments and precise orientations further integrated the pyramids into Egyptian cosmology, linking the pharaoh with the sun, stars, and cosmic order. Over time, pyramid construction evolved. During the 5th and 6th dynasties, smaller and less resource-intensive pyramids were built, reflecting changing economic, political, and religious conditions. The First Intermediate Period saw a shift to rock-cut tombs, while the Middle Kingdom and New Kingdom adapted architectural and ritual principles to different forms, including cliff tombs and valley complexes. Even as methods and scale changed, the principles of labor organization, ritual provision, and symbolic meaning remained central to Egyptian funerary architecture. Rediscovery and modern study of pyramids have revealed both the technical and cultural sophistication of these monuments. Archaeologists have documented construction methods, worker settlements, material sourcing, and inscriptions, while experimental archaeology has demonstrated the plausibility of transporting and placing massive stones using simple tools and human labor. Modern engineering studies confirm the ingenuity of load distribution, chamber design, and alignment techniques. Preservation efforts address erosion, human impact, and environmental challenges, ensuring the pyramid's survival for future generations. The lasting legacy of the pyramids is multifaceted. They are engineering marvels, demonstrating organizational mastery and practical problem-solving. They are cultural icons, symbolizing the pharaoh's divine authority and the cohesion of Egyptian society. They are religious instruments, integrating architecture, ritual, and cosmology to sustain the spiritual journey of rulers. They are historical records, preserving inscriptions, artifacts, and architectural techniques that provide insight into thousands of years of Egyptian civilization. In essence, the pyramids of Egypt represent the convergence of human ingenuity, spiritual devotion, and cultural continuity. From the initial quarrying of stone to the final placement of casing blocks, from daily rituals in mortuary temples to the detailed inscriptions within chambers, every aspect reflects meticulous planning and profound symbolic intention. The labor, resources, and expertise devoted to these monuments underscore their centrality to Egyptian society, while their enduring presence continues to inspire awe and study. As both physical structures and cultural symbols, the pyramids remain a testament to the remarkable capabilities of a civilization that flourished along the Nile more than 4,000 years ago. The history of pyramid construction in ancient Egypt can be traced chronologically through the dynasties, beginning with early experimentation and culminating in the monumental structures of the Old Kingdom. The earliest significant pyramid is the step pyramid of Djoser at Saqqara, built during the 3rd dynasty around 2667-2648 BCE. Designed by the architect Imhotep, it consists of 6 mastable-like layers stacked atop one another, reaching an original height of approximately 62 meters, 203 feet. Constructed from limestone blocks, it marked the transition from flat-roofed mastabas to 3-dimensional pyramids and incorporated an extensive network of underground chambers and galleries for the king's burial and ritual purposes. Following Djoser, the medium step pyramid at Medum is attributed to Pharaoh Sneferu of the 4th dynasty. Initially built as a step pyramid, it was later modified into a true pyramid form. The structure demonstrates experimentation with smooth casing and represents an intermediate stage between step pyramids and fully realized geometric forms. The pyramid's height reached approximately 93 meters, 305 feet, though partial collapse over millennia has left only the core visible. Sneferu also constructed 2 other major pyramids, the Bent Pyramid and the Red Pyramid at Dashur. The Bent Pyramid, completed around 2600 BCE, exhibits a change in slope from 54 degrees at the lower portion to 43 degrees at the upper portion, likely reflecting adjustments in construction technique and structural stability. It stands approximately 105 meters, 344 feet, tall. The Red Pyramid, considered Egypt's first successful true smooth-sided pyramid, reached 105 meters, 344 feet, in height and used red limestone for the core, demonstrating lessons learned from the Bent Pyramid. The Great Pyramid of Giza, built for Pharaoh Khufu, Cheops, around 2580 to 2560 BCE, represents the pinnacle of Old Kingdom pyramid construction. Originally standing at approximately 146.6 meters, 481 feet. It was constructed from an estimated 2.3 million limestone and granite blocks with core blocks weighing roughly 2.5 tons and select granite. Stones in the king's chamber weighing up to 80 tons. The pyramid is aligned within a few minutes of the cardinal points, with internal chambers, passageways, and relieving structures precisely engineered to manage weight and maintain stability. The surrounding complex included mortuary temples, subsidiary pyramids for queens, causeways, and workers' villages, demonstrating integrated planning and extensive labor coordination. Khafre, Khufu's son, built the second pyramid at Giza, around 2570 BCE, slightly smaller than the Great Pyramid. It originally reached 143.5 meters, 471 feet, and is notable for retaining some of its original polished casing near the apex. The adjacent Great Sphinx, carved from limestone, serves as a monumental guardian figure for the pyramid complex. The third pyramid of Giza, built for Pharaoh Menkaure around 2510 BCE, is smaller at approximately 65 meters, 230 feet, tall. Constructed with limestone core and granite facing in key sections, it emphasizes aesthetic refinement and symbolic proportion rather than sheer scale. Mortuary temples and subsidiary pyramids complemented the complex, continuing the integration of religious, administrative, and ceremonial functions. During the 5th dynasty, c. 2494 to 2345 BCE, pyramids were generally smaller and more economically constructed. Pharaohs such as Userkaf, Sayr, Neferkare, and Unas built pyramids with limestone cores and modest casing, typically 40 to 70 meters in height. Unas pyramid is particularly notable for containing the first complete pyramid texts, inscribed on the interior walls to guide the pharaoh in the afterlife. The 6th dynasty, c. 2345-2181 BCE, continued pyramid construction on a reduced scale. Pyramids built by Teti, Pepi I, and Pepi II were smaller, often around 50 meters in height, and used less durable materials. Internal chambers and mortuary temples maintained ritual significance, though construction reflected economic constraints and political decentralization. Following the Old Kingdom, pyramid construction largely shifted to the Middle Kingdom, c. 2055 to 1650 BCE. Pharaohs such as Amenhotep I and Senusret I built pyramids at Lisht with mudbrick cores and limestone casing. While smaller than Old Kingdom monuments, these pyramids incorporated internal chambers, passageways, and early coffin texts for spiritual guidance. By the New Kingdom, c. 1550 to 1070 BCE, pyramid construction had mostly ceased. Pharaohs preferred rock-cut tombs in the Valley of the Kings, providing secure, concealed burial places with complex corridors, chambers, and ritual paintings. These tombs maintain the symbolic and functional principles of pyramid architecture, emphasizing celestial alignment, ritual provision, and protection for the deceased, though in a different structural form. In summary, pyramid construction evolved over time from step pyramids to true smooth-sided pyramids, with experimentation, refinement, and adaptation to political and economic conditions. Key examples include the step pyramid of Djoser, Sneferu's Bent and Red pyramids, and the monumental pyramids of Giza for Khufu, Khafre, and Menkaure. Subsequent dynasties produced smaller pyramids while maintaining religious and symbolic functions, eventually transitioning to rock-cut tombs in the New Kingdom. Each pyramid reflects a combination of engineering, labor organization, ritual practice, and cultural significance, forming a continuous historical record of Egyptian architectural achievement. The construction of Egypt's pyramids relied on carefully selected materials sourced from specific quarries. TRNSPO are TD over long distances and shaped with precision by skilled workers. The primary material for the core of most pyramids was local limestone quarried on the Giza Plateau itself. These blocks typically weighed 2 to 2.5 tons, though some could reach up to 15 tons in certain layers. For higher quality casing stones, particularly the polished outer layer, Tura limestone, known for its fine grain transporting these materials, required careful planning and organization. Core limestone blocks were moved using wooden sledges, often pulled by teams of 10 to 20 workers for 2.5-ton blocks. Heavier granite blocks, weighing 25 to 80 tons, required hundreds of men and were transported on specially reinforced sledges along prepared pathways. Recent experimental studies and archaeological evidence suggest that water was poured on sand in front of sledges to reduce friction, facilitating movement and reducing the effort required by as much as 50%. Logs and rollers were likely used in some cases, while wooden levers helped adjust placement on ramps or at final positions. Ramps were integral to construction. Archaeologists have identified evidence for several ramp types: straight ramps extending from the base, zigzag ramps along pyramid faces, and spiral ramps wrapping around the exterior. The slope, width, and material of ramps were designed to support both the weight of the blocks and the volume of labor moving them. Ramp surfaces were maintained regularly, with sand leveled and compacted to provide firm footing for sledges. Workforce organization was highly sophisticated. Estimates based on archaeological discoveries at worker villages suggest permanent skilled crews of approximately 5,000 to 10,000 men, including masons, stonecutters, engineers, surveyors, and supervisors. Seasonal laborers drawn from agricultural populations during the Nile inundation increased this number by tens of thousands. Workers were organized into teams of 20 to 50 individuals, each with a foreman who reported to higher-level supervisors, ensuring coordinated movement of blocks, accuracy in placement, and continuity across the decades-long construction period. Daily routines were structured for efficiency and endurance. Workers typically began at dawn, taking advantage of cooler morning temperatures. Midday breaks allowed for meals, hydration, and rest, particularly important under the desert sun. Villages near the pyramids contained bakeries, breweries, storage areas, and medical facilities, ensuring continuous provision of bread, beer, vegetables, and occasionally meat or fish to sustain large teams. Rotations between physical labor, tool maintenance, and rest periods were carefully scheduled to prevent exhaustion and reduce accidents. Stone shaping and placement were equally precise. Skilled masons used copper chisels, dolerite hammers, and abrasive sand to cut and polish stones. Each casing block was fitted edge to edge to maintain smooth surfaces, while internal granite blocks were carefully lifted into position using ramps, levers, and coordinated human effort. Supervisors monitored horizontal and vertical alignment using plumb lines, leveling tools, and sighting techniques, ensuring that each layer maintained the intended slope and geometric integrity. In addition to block placement, ancillary tasks such as ramp maintenance, water management, tool fabrication, and support logistics were handled by dedicated teams. These tasks were essential to sustaining continuous construction, preventing bottlenecks and preserving the structural integrity of the pyramid. Archaeological evidence shows storage areas, workshops, and supply depots strategically located to optimize workflow and minimize downtime. In summary, the construction of pyramids was a highly coordinated endeavor integrating precise materials, transport techniques, labor organization, and daily routines. Limestone, granite, and other materials were quarried and transported with remarkable ingenuity, while skilled and seasonal laborers executed complex tasks under careful supervision. Ramps, sledges, levers, and alignment tools facilitated the movement and placement of massive blocks. Worker villages, provision systems, and rotation schedules ensured sustained productivity over decades. This combination of engineering, logistics, and human organization allowed ancient Egyptians to construct monuments of extraordinary scale, precision, and cultural significance that continue to endure thousands of years later. The Great Pyramid of Khufu provides the most detailed example of construction metrics. Its base originally measured approximately 230.4 meters, 756 feet per side, forming a near-perfect square. Core limestone blocks typically measured 1.3 meters long, 1 meter wide, and 0.7 meters high, with individual weights ranging from 2.3 to 2.5 tons. Granite blocks in the King's Chamber were substantially larger, measuring up to 2.1 meters long, 1.2 meters wide, and 1.2 meters high, with weights reaching over 80 tons. Casing stones of Tura limestone were finely polished, often weighing 2.5 tons each, and precisely fitted to ensure smooth, reflective surfaces. Internal chambers also had precise dimensions. The King's Chamber measures approximately 10.5 meters long, 5.2 meters wide, and 5.8 meters high, constructed entirely from granite. The Queen's Chamber is smaller, around 5.7 meters long, 5.2 meters wide, and 5.8 meters high. with a corbelled ceiling to distribute weight. Passageways connecting chambers vary, with the Grand Gallery extending 46.7 meters in length and tapering in width from 2.06 meters at the base to 1.05 meters at the top. Ventilation shafts within the King S and Queen S chambers are roughly 0.2 meters wide and angled to align with specific stars, highlighting the integration of astronomy in design. Ramps used to transport blocks have been estimated using archaeological and experimental data. Straight ramps at the base may have extended over 500 meters, while zigzag ramps on pyramid faces reduced the linear distance but required careful coordination. Spiral ramps wrapping around the exterior may have been over 300 meters in length to reach the apex, with slope angles between 5 and 10 degrees to balance effort and stability. These ramps were built from mud brick, limestone chippings, and compacted sand, reinforced as needed to handle the weight of blocks being hauled upward. Workforce distribution varied by construction stage. Quarrying and initial transport required hundreds to thousands of men, while placement of lower layers involved teams of 50 to 100 workers per block, coordinated with foremen and engineers. Upper layers required larger teams, sometimes over 200 workers per block, to maneuver heavier stones up ramps. Daily rotations ensured that labor was sustainable, with permanent skilled crews maintaining precision tasks such as alignment, cutting, and finishing. Time estimates for specific construction phases are informed by both archaeological records and experimental replication. Quarrying and initial cutting of limestone and granite blocks may have taken several months per set of layers, while transport to the pyramid site required additional weeks depending on distance. Placement and alignment of lower layers could proceed faster due to easier access, with upper layers requiring slower, more coordinated effort. For the Great Pyramid, total construction likely took approximately 20 to 25 years, consistent with administrative records and archaeological evidence. Casing and finishing phases demanded precision work. Each Tura limestone block for the outer surface was positioned individually, checked for alignment, and polished on site. Supervisors ensured that edges were flush, surfaces smooth, and the pyramid's overall slope maintained at approximately 51.5 degrees. Installation of the apex pyramidion completed the geometric and symbolic form. Daily life of the workforce continued in parallel with construction. Villages housed skilled and seasonal workers, providing bread, beer, and vegetables for sustenance, medical care for injuries, and communal spaces for rest. Teams rotated through quarrying, transport, and placement duties, ensuring steady progress while preventing fatigue and accidents. Tool production and maintenance, ramp repair, and stone shaping occurred simultaneously to prevent delays. In summary, the Great Pyramid's construction illustrates remarkable precision in block dimensions, chamber sizes, ramp engineering, and labor coordination. Core and casing stones were carefully measured and transported. Chambers were proportioned for structural and symbolic purposes, ramps facilitated movement, and workforce organization ensured decades-long productivity. The combination of materials, engineering, and human effort demonstrates that the construction of pyramids was a meticulously planned and executed endeavor, achieving extraordinary architectural and cultural feats that continue to endure. The labor force responsible for constructing Egypt's pyramids was highly structured, with clear hierarchies, specialized roles, and well-organized management systems. At the top of the pyramid of authority was the pharaoh, whose vision and resources determined the scale, design, and purpose of the construction. Directly under the pharaoh, a team of high-ranking officials and royal architects, such as the vizier and master builder, oversaw planning, resource allocation, and quality control. Beneath these officials, foremen and surveyors managed smaller teams of skilled workers, including stonecutters, masons, carpenters, and engineers. Surveyors were responsible for maintaining accurate measurements, ensuring correct orientation, and aligning structures with celestial markers. Foremen directed laborers, assigned tasks, monitored progress, and ensured adherence to construction schedules. Scribes recorded daily activities, stone placement, and worker rotations, maintaining precise records that allowed continuity over decades. The workforce itself consisted of two main groups: permanent skilled workers and seasonal laborers. Skilled workers lived near the pyramid sites in purpose-built villages with dormitories, bakeries, breweries, and workshops. They were trained in stone cutting, transport logistics, alignment measurement, and finishing techniques. Seasonal laborers, often drawn from rural agricultural communities during the Nile's inundation when fields were underwater, supplemented the workforce during peak construction periods. Rotational schedules ensured that workers could maintain productivity without exhausting the available labor pool. Daily routines were carefully structured. Work typically began at dawn and continued until mid-morning, followed by a break for meals and hydration. Workers then resumed labor until late afternoon, with adjustments for extreme heat or adverse weather. Meals consisted primarily of bread and beer, supplemented with vegetables, fish, and occasionally meat, providing high-energy sustenance for physically demanding tasks. Archaeological evidence indicates communal kitchens and distribution points, allowing large groups of workers to be fed efficiently. Living conditions in worker villages were basic but functional. Dormitories provided shelter and communal spaces for rest, while sanitation facilities, water access, and medical care were integrated to maintain workforce health. Archaeological findings reveal evidence of treatment for injuries indicating organized medical support. Tools were produced and maintained on-site, including chisels, hammers, wooden sledges, and ropes, ensuring uninterrupted workflow. Recreational and religious activities were also part of life in these villages, contributing to morale and social cohesion. Labor management was adapted to pyramid construction phases. During quarrying, teams focused on cutting, shaping, and transporting blocks. During ramp construction and placement, additional coordination was required, with specialized teams operating levers, sledges, and rollers. Skilled masons focused on finishing, alignment, and precise fitting, particularly for casing stones and internal chamber elements. Daily rotations, task specialization, and supervision ensured efficiency, prevented delays, and maintained structural integrity. The organization of labor demonstrates a sophisticated understanding of logistics, human endurance, and material management. Archaeological evidence, including workers' graffiti, tools, and remains of villages, confirms that laborers were not slaves but part of a structured, compensated workforce. They were provided with food, accommodation, and care, highlighting the complexity of social organization required to complete monumental projects. In summary, pyramid construction relied on a hierarchical labor system integrating permanent skilled workers, seasonal laborers, foremen, surveyors, scribes, and royal officials. Daily routines, nutrition, living conditions, and rotations were carefully managed to sustain productivity over decades. Worker villages provided infrastructure for accommodation, food, tool maintenance, and medical care, while task specialization ensured efficiency in quarrying, transport, placement, and finishing. This organized labor system, combined with engineering knowledge and planning, enabled ancient Egyptians to construct pyramids of extraordinary scale, precision, and cultural significance. Ceremonial practices and religious rituals were deeply intertwined with pyramid construction, reflecting the Egyptian belief that building the pharaoh's tomb was not merely a physical act but a sacred duty. Construction sites were treated as both workspaces and ritual spaces, integrating spiritual observance into the daily labor of quarrying, transporting, and placing stones. At the beginning of construction, dedication ceremonies were conducted to consecrate the site. Priests, accompanied by officials and workers, performed offerings to the gods, particularly Ptah, the god of craftsmen, and Ra, the sun god, whose rays the pyramid's sloping faces symbolically reflected. These ceremonies included the presentation of food, incense, and libations, as well as recitation of hymns and prayers to ensure divine favor and protection for the pharaoh's soul and the workers engaged in the project. During construction, smaller rituals were performed regularly. Workers and masons offered small sacrifices or personal tokens at temporary shrines near the pyramid base, seeking protection from injury and success in their labor. Some graffiti discovered in worker tunnels and quarries contains invocations or blessings, indicating that daily work was accompanied by a spiritual mindset. Supervisors and scribes participated in ritual acts to mark milestones, such as completion of a pyramid layer, placement of key casing stones or completion of a chamber. Architectural features of the pyramid also serve ceremonial functions. Orientation toward the cardinal points, alignment with celestial bodies, and careful placement of internal chambers reflected cosmological beliefs. Ventilation shafts in the king's and queen's chambers, aligned with specific stars like Sirius or Orion's belt, allowed for symbolic connection between the pharaoh's soul and the heavens. Rituals during construction often included inspection and consecration of these chambers to ensure spiritual readiness for their future use. Mortuary temples adjacent to pyramids were central to ongoing ritual activity. While the pyramid itself symbolized the pharaoh's eternal presence, the temple allowed priests to conduct daily offerings, recite sacred texts, and perform ceremonies to sustain the king's ka or life force. These activities linked construction labor to spiritual purpose, reinforcing the idea that every block placed and every ramp built was part of a divine process. Festivals and seasonal rituals also influenced labor patterns. During the Nile inundation, when agricultural work was suspended, seasonal laborers could participate in construction. Religious festivals, particularly those honoring Osiris, the god of death and resurrection, and Ra, reinforced workers' participation in sacred acts, connecting communal effort with cosmological significance. Inscriptions and reliefs on some pyramid complexes depict ceremonial processions, offerings, and symbolic representations of these festivals, illustrating the integration of religious life with monumental construction. Additionally, ceremonial practices extended to material preparation. Quarrying, stone shaping, and transportation were often preceded by symbolic acts, including marking stones with sacred inscriptions or performing ritual purification. This ensured that both materials and workers were ritually aligned with the sacred purpose of the pyramid. In summary, ceremonial practices and rituals were fundamental to pyramid construction. Dedication ceremonies, daily offerings, blessings, and inspection of key architectural features integrated spirituality into physical labor. Mortuary temples, festival participation, and symbolic alignment reinforced the pharaoh's divine authority and ensured that construction was not only a technical endeavor but a sacred, culturally significant process. By embedding ritual observance into every stage from quarrying to placement to consecration ancient, Egyptians created pyramids that were simultaneously architectural achievements and enduring expressions of religious devotion. The Step Pyramid of Djoser at Saqqara is the earliest large-scale pyramid in Egypt. Constructed during the 3rd dynasty around 266-72-648 BCE, its base measures approximately 121 meters by 109 meters, 397 by 358 feet, and it originally rose to a height of 62 meters, 203 feet, across 6 stepped layers. The complex includes a network of underground chambers, galleries, and storage rooms beneath the pyramid, forming a labyrinth-like necropolis. Key chambers include the burial chamber, serdab, statue chamber, and corridors extending for over 5 kilometers beneath the pyramid. Surrounding the pyramid are courtyards, temples, and ceremonial structures, all enclosed by a 10-meter-high limestone wall that defined the sacred precinct. The Medum Pyramid, often attributed to Pharaoh Sneferu, originally consisted of a step structure later modified into a true pyramid. The base measures approximately 144 meters by 139 meters, 472 by 456 feet, with an estimated original height of 93 meters, 305 feet. Partial collapse has left only the core structure visible today. Internal features include burial chambers and corridors, though the original design included multiple stepped layers similar to Djoser's pyramid. The bent pyramid at Dahshur, also built by Sneferu around 2600 BCE, is notable for its change in slope. The lower portion rises at 54 degrees for about 2/3 of the height, while the upper portion reduces to 43 degrees, reaching a total height of 105 meters, 344 feet. The pyramid contains dual burial chambers and a network of corridors. The lower chamber, intended for burial, is partially unfinished, and a secondary chamber above it reflects a shift in construction strategy to improve structural stability. The base measures 188 meters by 188 meters, 617 by 617 feet. The red pyramid, Sneferu's final pyramid at Dashur, represents the first successful smooth-sided pyramid. Its base is approximately 220 meters by 220 meters, 722 by 722 feet, with a height of 105 meters, 344 feet. Internal chambers include a burial chamber, a subsidiary chamber, and a long descending corridor, all constructed with red limestone. The red pyramid's uniform slope of 43 degrees and precise internal alignment demonstrate lessons learned from the bent pyramid's structural challenges. The Great Pyramid of Khufu at Giza is the largest pyramid of the Old Kingdom. Its base measures 230.4 meters per side, 756 feet, originally rising to 146.6 meters, 481 feet. Though erosion and loss of casing stones have reduced the current height to 138.8 meters, 455 feet, core blocks weigh 2.3 to 2.5 tons, with granite blocks in the King's Chamber weighing up to 80 tons. The Pyramid of Khafre, slightly smaller than Khufu's, has a base of 215.5 meters by 215.5 meters, 706 by 706 feet, and an original height of 143.5 meters, 471 feet. It retains some of its polished casing near the apex. The internal burial chamber is carved from granite and aligned with the pyramid's central axis. The Great Sphinx lies adjacent to the complex, carved directly from the limestone bedrock to guard the pyramid. The Pyramid of Menkaure, the smallest of these pyramids, has a base of 102.2 meters by 104.6 meters, 335 by 343 feet, and an original height of 65 meters, 213 feet. Its core consists of limestone, while the lower courses and mortuary temple incorporate granite. Internal chambers include a main burial chamber, subsidiary shafts, and corridors. 3 smaller queen pyramids accompany Menkaure's pyramid, forming an integrated complex with ceremonial and symbolic significance. In summary, Old Kingdom pyramids evolved from stepped structures to true smooth-sided forms, each with unique measurements and internal layouts. Step Pyramid of Djoser introduced layered construction and extensive underground chambers. Sneferu's pyramids at Medum, Dashurbent, and Red Pyramids experimented with slopes and structural stability. The Giza pyramids Khufu, Khafre, and Menkaure represent the apex of Old Kingdom design, with precise dimensions, massive stone blocks, aligned chambers, and complex surrounding structures. Each pyramid demonstrates advances in engineering, religious symbolism, and logistical organization, forming a continuous historical record of Egypt's monumental architecture. The outer casing of Egyptian pyramids, particularly the Great Pyramid of Khufu, was designed to create a smooth, reflective surface that would gleam in sunlight and symbolize the pharaoh's divine connection to Ra, the sun god. These casing stones were typically cut from high-quality Tura limestone, renowned for its fine grain, durability, and bright white color. Each block measured roughly 1 meter by 1 meter by 0.5 to 0.7 meters, weighing approximately 2.5 tons, though sizes varied depending on placement and slope requirements. Casing stones were shaped with extreme precision to ensure that edges fit flush with adjacent blocks. Ancient masons used copper chisels, dolerite pounding stones, and abrasive sand to cut and smooth surfaces. The final layer of the outer casing was polished, producing a reflective finish that would have caught sunlight and appeared luminous from great distances. Some experimental archaeology projects have demonstrated that polishing required significant manual effort, but could be achieved using basic materials, such as rubbing blocks with sand and water repeatedly over several hours. Blocks were transported from the Tura quarries across the Nile using wooden sledges, and barges, taking advantage of seasonal flooding to reduce friction and allow heavier stones to be floated closer to the construction site. At the pyramid, ramps facilitated movement to higher layers. Workers positioned each casing stone carefully, verifying alignment with plumb lines, leveling tools, and sighting methods to maintain the pyramid's intended slope, which for Khufu's Great Pyramid was approximately 51.5 degrees. Special attention was given to the apex or pyramidion. This topmost stone was often carved from a single block of granite or limestone and polished to a mirror-like finish. It completed the geometric perfection of the pyramid and served as a symbolic point connecting the structure with the heavens. Although the original pyramidion is lost, historical accounts suggest it may have been covered with gold or electrum to enhance reflectivity. Casing methods varied slightly across dynasties. In the Bent Pyramid and Red Pyramid of Sneferu, casing stones were installed with careful attention to slope changes, while the Giza pyramids emphasized uniform slope and precision fit. Workers likely used temporary wooden scaffolds, levers, and guide channels to position stones accurately. In some pyramids, the lower courses were fitted first, creating a stable base for subsequent layers, while upper layers required increased coordination to ensure alignment and surface smoothness. Over time, much of the outer casing of pyramids has been lost due to weathering, earthquakes, and deliberate removal for other construction projects. What remains, such as in the upper courses of the Pyramid of Khafar, provides insight into the quality and precision of the original work. Surviving casing stones show extremely tight joints, smooth surfaces, and consistent slope angles, confirming that ancient Egyptian masons achieved a level of craftsmanship unparalleled for their time. In addition to structural and aesthetic purposes, casing stones also provided protection for the core blocks, shielding them from wind, sand erosion, and temperature fluctuations. The reflective surface enhanced the pyramid's symbolic function, making it visible across the desert and reinforcing the pharaoh's presence and authority. In summary, pyramid casing stones were meticulously cut, polished, and aligned to create smooth reflective surfaces. Techniques involved precise quarrying, transport via sledges and barges, careful placement using ramps and tools, and repeated polishing with sand and water. The outer casing provided both protective and symbolic functions, completing the monumental design while emphasizing the pyramid's religious and cultural significance. The craftsmanship of these stones remains a testament to the skill, planning, and labor organization of ancient Egyptian builders. The movement and placement of massive stone blocks during pyramid construction required a combination of engineering ingenuity, precise planning, and coordinated human effort. While no definitive evidence exists for the use of advanced machines, archaeological studies and experimental archaeology have demonstrated that ancient Egyptians successfully employed ramps, levers, sledges, and basic hoisting techniques to lift, slide, and position stones weighing several tons. Ramps were central to construction logistics. Straight ramps extended from the pyramid base, sometimes over 500 meters, allowing workers to pull blocks upward at gradual slopes of approximately 5 to 10 degrees. Zigzag ramps along pyramid faces reduced the overall gradient while facilitating access to higher layers. Spiral ramps wrapping around the pyramid were also likely employed, particularly for finishing upper sections, providing a controlled path for stone transport and minimizing the risk of collapse. Ramp surfaces were composed of mud brick, limestone chippings, and compacted sand to provide firm footing and reduce friction. Levers and wooden sledges enabled precise positioning. Workers placed stones on sledges, then used long wooden levers to adjust alignment and lift stones slightly to slide them into final positions. Teams often worked in coordinated sequences, with synchronized pulling, levering, and minor adjustments to place blocks with minimal gaps. Graffiti and archaeological evidence suggest teams of 10 to 50 men per sledge for standard limestone blocks, while heavier granite blocks could require hundreds of workers using multiple sledges and levers in combination. Hoisting techniques may have included inclined planes, counterweights, and wooden frames, although no surviving mechanical devices exist. Experimental studies indicate that lifting a block up a short vertical distance could be achieved by pivoting levers and sliding blocks incrementally along prepared platforms or ramps. Small wooden rollers, ropes, and wedges assisted in maintaining control and preventing blocks from tipping or slipping. Coordination methods were crucial. Foremen directed teams using visual signals, sound cues, and written instructions to synchronize labor during transport and placement. Scribes recorded block counts, team assignments, and progress, ensuring continuity over decades of construction. Worker rotations were scheduled to maintain stamina, with breaks for meals, hydration, and rest. Teams specialized in quarrying, transport, ramp maintenance, or finishing, allowing simultaneous progress on multiple fronts of the pyramid. Large-scale logistical planning extended beyond the immediate construction site. Quarries were organized to provide continuous supply, with designated transport paths, staging areas, and temporary storage for blocks. Seasonal planning took advantage of the Nile flood to transport stones via barges, reducing effort for long-distance movement. Material stockpiling ensured that construction could proceed year-round without interruption. Experimental archaeology has replicated these methods successfully. Teams of volunteers using wooden sledges, ropes, levers, and ramps have moved multi-ton limestone blocks over sand and slight inclines, confirming that large-scale pyramids could be constructed without advanced machinery. These experiments also support historical accounts of team coordination, daily rotations, and careful supervision as essential elements in achieving precise placement of massive stones. In summary, pyramid construction logistics relied on ramps, levers, sledges, hoisting techniques, and careful coordination. Ramps provided access to all levels, levers and sledges allowed precise positioning, and hoisting techniques enabled vertical adjustments. Labor teams were carefully organized, supervised, and rotated to ensure continuous progress, while quarrying, transport, and staging were integrated into a broader logistical system. This combination of simple but effective engineering methods and detailed planning allowed ancient Egyptians to move and place stones weighing several tons with remarkable accuracy, resulting in the enduring monuments we see today. The workforce required to construct Egypt's pyramids varied depending on the size, materials, and complexity of each structure, as well as the phase of construction. Archaeological evidence, including remains of worker villages, graffiti, and administrative records, provides insight into the scale and organization of labor. For the Great Pyramid of Khufu, estimates suggest a permanent core workforce of approximately 5,000 to 10,000 skilled workers, including masons, stonecutters, engineers, foremen, and scribes. Seasonal laborers, drawn from agricultural communities during the Nile flood when fields were submerged, likely added an additional 10,000 to 20,000 workers, increasing manpower during peak phases. Work was divided into specialized tasks. Quarrying teams responsible for cutting limestone and granite blocks consisted of roughly 200 to 500 workers at any given time, depending on the rate of production needed. Quarrying granite from Aswan, which involved heavier stones and longer transport distances, required particularly large crews, sometimes exceeding 1,000 men. Transport teams moved blocks from quarries to the pyramid site using sledges, ramps, and barges. Standard limestone blocks, 2 to 2.5 tons, were typically handled by 10 to 20 men per block, while heavier granite blocks could require hundreds of men, coordinated into multiple squads to manage sledges, levers, and alignment. Seasonal laborers often assisted in these phases, increasing overall efficiency. Placement crews at the pyramid site were organized into small teams of 10 to 50 men per block for lower layers, and larger teams for upper layers, with some upper granite blocks requiring coordinated effort by 100 to 200 men. These teams positioned stones with levers, temporary platforms, and ramps, following strict alignment protocols monitored by foremen and surveyors. Finishing and casing teams focused on installing Tura limestone casing stones, smoothing surfaces, and checking alignment. These tasks demanded precision over brute force. Teams of 20 to 40 skilled masons worked on a section at a time, polishing each stone and ensuring tight joints. Supervisors inspected each layer before work continued upward. Workforce distribution shifted over time. Early phases emphasized quarrying and ramp construction, requiring more men at remote sites and fewer on the pyramid face. As construction progressed, more workers were concentrated at placement points and finishing areas. Rotation schedules ensured that workers could sustain effort over long periods without fatigue, with shifts typically lasting from dawn until mid-afternoon, adjusted for weather conditions. Smaller pyramids, such as Menkaure's at Giza or Fifth Dynasty structures, required fewer workers proportionally. Estimates suggest a permanent workforce of 2,000 to 5,000 skilled laborers, supplemented by 5,000 to 10,000 seasonal laborers. While the overall scale was reduced, The division of labor, specialization of teams, and rotational schedules mirrored those of larger pyramids. In addition to laborers directly handling stones, support personnel included bakers, brewers, toolmakers, carpenters, medical staff, and scribes, ensuring the daily functioning of the workforce. Villages provided accommodation, food distribution, water, and medical care, forming a self-contained system capable of sustaining thousands of people for decades. In summary, pyramid construction required carefully estimated workforce allocation. Quarrying, transport, placement, and finishing each demanded specific team sizes, skill levels, and coordination. Large projects, such as the Great Pyramid of Khufu, involved tens of thousands of workers with permanent skilled crews supplemented by seasonal labor. Smaller pyramids scaled down proportionally but maintained the same organizational structure. Support personnel and infrastructure were integral, ensuring continuous productivity and effective management throughout decades-long construction timelines. Daily life for the workforce building Egypt's pyramids was carefully structured to maintain productivity, health, and efficiency. Workers typically began their day at dawn, taking advantage of cooler morning temperatures in the desert. Teams assembled at designated work areas, often near quarries or ramps, and began labor-intensive tasks such as cutting, transporting, and placing stone blocks. Work shifts varied depending on the phase of construction and seasonal conditions. Morning shifts generally lasted 4 to 6 hours, followed by a break for meals and rest during the hotter midday hours. Afterward, workers returned for a second shift of 3 to 5 hours, finishing tasks that required less physical strain or that could be completed safely under the sun. Tasks were rotated among teams to prevent fatigue. Some men focused on stone shaping, others on transport, ramp maintenance, or placement. Diet played a crucial role in sustaining energy for physically demanding labor. Archaeological evidence from worker villages indicates that meals primarily consisted of bread made from emmer wheat, accompanied by beer as a high-calorie liquid. Vegetables such as onions, garlic, and lentils supplemented nutrition, while fish, meat, and poultry were occasionally provided for added protein. Workers received daily rations sufficient to sustain high levels of activity, and communal kitchens ensured that large numbers could be fed efficiently. Tools were essential for all stages of construction. Masons and stonecutters used copper chisels, dolerite hammers, wooden mallets, and abrasive sand to shape limestone and granite blocks. Transport teams relied on wooden sledges, ropes, and wooden rollers, while ramps and platforms were reinforced using mud brick and limestone chippings. Carpenters and toolmakers maintained these implements on site, ensuring a steady supply of functional equipment. Ropes were used not only for hauling sledges, but also for positioning stones accurately during placement. Medical care was surprisingly organized. Archaeological evidence from workers' cemeteries shows treatment for fractures, arthritis, and other injuries, suggesting access to care by trained healers. Simple splints, bandages, and herbal treatments were likely employed, with some injuries showing signs of long-term care and rehabilitation. Workers' villages included dedicated spaces for resting and recovery, indicating a systemic approach to worker health. Accommodation in worker villages was functional but adequate. Dormitories housed teams in communal arrangements, with sleeping platforms and shared space for rest. Sanitation facilities and access to water were available, reducing disease risk. Villages also provided storage for tools, food, and supplies, creating a self-contained infrastructure capable of supporting thousands of men over decades. Work monitoring was systematic. Foremen oversaw teams, ensuring adherence to schedules, proper use of tools, and safety during lifting and placement. Scribes recorded daily activities, stone counts, and team rotations. Supervisors ensured that productivity goals were met while maintaining worker welfare, balancing speed and precision with human limitations. In summary, pyramid workers followed a highly organized daily schedule with morning and afternoon shifts, regular breaks, and task rotation. Their diet consisted mainly of bread, beer, vegetables, and occasional protein sources. Tools and equipment were maintained on site, while medical care and accommodations provided health support and recovery. Systematic oversight by foremen and scribes ensured both efficiency and safety. creating a sustainable labor system capable of supporting massive construction projects over decades. The source of construction materials was critical for pyramid building, as the size, quality, and durability of stones directly affected the structural integrity of each monument. Limestone, the primary material for the cores of most pyramids, was quarried locally on the Giza Plateau for the Great Pyramid, providing blocks weighing 2 to 2.5 tons. Extraction methods for limestone involved first identifying natural fissures or bedding planes in the rock. Workers used copper chisels, dolerite pounding stones, and wooden wedges to separate blocks. The wedges were inserted into cut grooves and soaked with water. As the wood expanded, it created pressure that split the stone along natural lines. This technique allowed for precise extraction with minimal waste. Quarrying granite at Aswan involved similar techniques but required larger teams and more time due to the hardness of the stone. Once extracted, blocks were rough-shaped at the quarry to reduce transport weight and ease final placement. Limestone blocks were often shaped to uniform dimensions, typically 1 meter long, 1 meter wide, and 0.7 meters high, with slight variations depending on layer placement. Granite blocks could weigh up to 80 tons and required careful measurement and preparation to fit interior chambers precisely. Transport relied on sledges, rollers, and barges. Limestone blocks from local quarries were moved on wooden sledges over prepared pathways and ramps, sometimes lubricated with water or sand to reduce friction. Larger granite blocks from Aswan were loaded onto Nile barges during the annual inundation, floated downstream to Giza, and offloaded at temporary docks. From there, they were moved to the pyramid base using sledges, ramps, and coordinated teams. Stone preparation at the construction site involved further shaping, polishing, and fitting. Skilled masons refined the rough blocks to precise dimensions, checking each against plumb lines, leveling instruments, and sighting techniques to maintain accuracy. Casing stones were polished with abrasive sand and water, creating smooth, reflective surfaces. Granite blocks in burial chambers were dressed to tight tolerances to distribute weight effectively and align with architectural specifications. Quarrying and transport were phased to match construction needs. Core blocks were stockpiled near the pyramid base in alignment with planned placement sequences. Casing stones were transported as required for upper layers, and granite blocks were delivered shortly before placement to minimize handling challenges. Temporary storage areas and ramps ensured continuous workflow without bottlenecks. In summary, pyramid construction depended on carefully selected quarries, effective extraction methods, and meticulous preparation of stones. Limestone was quarried locally, Tura limestone for casing was brought from across the Nile, and granite from Aswan. Blocks were rough-shaped at quarries, transported via sledges and barges, and finally dressed on site. Phased delivery and careful stockpiling ensured seamless construction progress. A combination of quarrying skill, logistical planning, and precise stone preparation allowed ancient Egyptians to build monuments of extraordinary scale, accuracy, and durability. The Great Pyramid of Khufu at Giza contains approximately 2.3 million blocks. Core limestone blocks average 2.3 to 2.5 tons each, while larger granite blocks in the King's Chamber weigh between 25 and 80 tons. The pyramid's original height was 146.6 meters, 481 feet, with a base of 230.4 meters per side, 756 feet. The slope of the faces measured 51.5 degrees. Layer heights vary depending on placement. Lower layers consist of larger blocks approximately 1.3 meters high, while upper layers use smaller blocks around 0.7 to 1 meter high. The cumulative weight of the pyramid is estimated at 6.5 million tons. Construction is believed to have taken 20 to 25 years, based on administrative records, workforce estimates, and experimental reconstructions. The Pyramid of Kafur, slightly smaller, has a base of 215.5 meters per side, 706 feet, and an original height of 143.5 meters, 471 feet. Core limestone blocks weigh roughly 2 to 2.5 tons, with granite used in the burial chamber weighing up to 50 tons. Layer heights are similar to Khufu's, tapering slightly as the pyramid ascends. The total number of blocks is estimated at 2.1 million, with a cumulative weight of around 4.8 million tons. Construction likely took 15 to 20 years, employing both permanent skilled workers and seasonal laborers. The Pyramid of Menkaure, the smallest Giza pyramid, has a base of 102.2 by 104.6 meters, 335 by 343 feet, and an original height of 65 meters, 213 feet. Core blocks weigh 1.5 to 2 tons on average, with granite and basalt in the lower courses and burial chamber reaching up to 50 tons. The pyramid contains approximately 200,000 to 250,000 blocks, with a cumulative weight near 300,000 to 350,000 tons. Construction likely spanned 10 to 12 years, proportionally shorter due to its smaller size and reduced workforce. For the Red Pyramid at Dashur, the base measures 220 meters per side, 722 feet, and the height is 105 meters, 344 feet. Limestone blocks weigh approximately 2 to 2.5 tons, with the total number of blocks estimated at 1.6 million. Layer heights average 1 meter for lower layers, decreasing slightly toward the apex. Construction likely required 15 to 20 years, reflecting lessons learned from earlier pyramids such as the Bent Pyramid. The Bent Pyramid has a base of 188 meters per side, 617 feet, and a height of 105 meters, 344 feet. Though the slope changes from 54 degrees at the lower section to 43 degrees above 2/3 of the height. Blocks are similar in weight to other Snefru pyramids, with approximately 1.2 to 1.4 million blocks used in total. Layer heights range from 1 to 1.3 meters at the base to 0.7 to 1 meter at the upper layers. Construction spanned 15 to 20 years, reflecting both technical challenges and adaptive solutions to structural instability. The Step Pyramid of Djoser has a base of 121 by 109 meters, 397 by 358 feet, and a height of 62 meters, 203 feet, across 6 stepped layers. Blocks weigh approximately 2 to 2.3 tons each, with the total number estimated at 330,000 to 350,000, resulting in a cumulative weight of 600,000 to 650,000 tons. Its construction likely took 15 to 17 years, including extensive underground chambers and galleries. In summary, pyramid construction demonstrates precise numerical planning. Core blocks average 2 to 2.5 tons, granite blocks range from 25 to 80 tons, layer heights decreased with elevation, and total block counts ranged from hundreds of thousands to over 2 million. Cumulative weights reached millions of tons, and construction timelines spanned 10 to 25 years, depending on pyramid size. Layer design, slope, and material choice were carefully calculated, ensuring structural stability, precision alignment, and long-term durability. By the end of the Old Kingdom, pyramid construction had reached its apex in scale, precision, and complexity. The Great Pyramid of Khufu, along with those of Khafre and Menkaure, represented monumental achievements in engineering, organization, and religious symbolism. However, by the end of the 6th dynasty, c. 2181 BCE, several factors contributed to the decline of pyramid building as the primary form of pharaonic tomb architecture. Economic strain played a significant role. Constructing large pyramids required massive allocations of resources, including labor, materials, and administrative oversight. As centralized authority weakened during periods of political instability, maintaining such extensive projects became increasingly difficult. Additionally, rising Nile floods and climatic fluctuations occasionally disrupted agriculture, limiting the availability of seasonal labor drawn from farming communities. Religious and cultural shifts also influenced construction practices. Pyramids, initially designed as visible symbols of divine authority and vehicles for the pharaoh's afterlife, gradually gave way to more concealed tombs. Security concerns arose due to looting. Even the most massive pyramids were vulnerable to theft of burial goods and precious materials. Tombs constructed in hidden valleys or underground chambers, such as those in Dashur and later in the Valley of the Kings, provided better protection for pharaonic remains and treasures. During the first intermediate period, the weakening of centralized power reduced large-scale pyramid projects. Local rulers and officials built smaller pyramids or mastaba-style tombs, often with simplified construction and less emphasis on grandiose exterior casing. Materials shifted from fine limestone to more locally available stone and mud brick, reducing costs but also changing the aesthetic and durability of the tombs. The Middle Kingdom, c. 2055 to 1650 BCE, marked a period of revival for pyramid construction, but with notable differences. Pharaohs like Amenhotep I and Senusret I built pyramids with cores made of mud brick rather than entirely of limestone. These pyramids were smaller, less massive, and often lacked the extensive casing or internal chambers of Old Kingdom examples. The emphasis shifted from monumental visibility to internal decoration, including elaborate burial chambers, inscribed corridors, and funerary texts such as the coffin texts, which provided spiritual guidance for the afterlife. Construction techniques adapted to these changes. Mud brick cores were easier to produce and assemble, requiring smaller workforce numbers. Limited limestone casing was applied selectively, and decorative elements were incorporated internally. Ramps and sledges continued to be used, but the scale of transport was reduced. Seasonal labor remained important, but permanent skilled teams could complete these smaller pyramids more efficiently. By the New Kingdom, c. 1550 to 1070 BCE, pyramids were largely abandoned in favor of rock-cut tombs in the Valley of the Kings. These tombs used natural cliffs to provide security and incorporated complex internal layouts with chambers, corridors, and ventilation shafts. Burial practices continued to emphasize the pharaoh's journey to the afterlife, but monumental above-ground pyramids were no longer practical or necessary. Temples and mortuary cults shifted to support these concealed tombs, reflecting evolving religious priorities. In summary, the decline of pyramid building was influenced by economic constraints, security concerns, political instability, and evolving religious practices. Old Kingdom pyramids represented monumental, visible statements of divine authority, while Middle Kingdom pyramids were smaller, often mud brick-based, and focused on internal decoration. By the New Kingdom, rock-cut tombs replaced pyramids entirely, emphasizing security, efficiency, and ritual function. The transition reflects both practical adaptations and changing cultural priorities over centuries of Egyptian history. Even after the decline of pyramid construction as a practical method for royal burials, pyramids retained immense cultural, religious, and symbolic significance throughout Egyptian history. They remained enduring markers of the pharaoh's divine authority, eternal life, and connection to the cosmos. The sheer scale and precision of the structures reinforced the idea that the pharaoh's soul transcended mortality, aligning with religious beliefs about the afterlife and the Ka, or vital life force. In later periods, pyramids continued to function as cultural reference points. They were studied, maintained, and even repurposed by subsequent dynasties. During the New Kingdom, while tomb construction shifted to the Valley of the Kings, priests and officials still performed rituals at older pyramid sites. Mortuary temples and surrounding cult complexes preserved the memory of earlier rulers, and ceremonial activities maintained continuity with Old Kingdom religious practices. Pyramids also influenced Egyptian art and architecture beyond their original function. The symbolic use of the pyramid-shaped triangular, ascending toward the sky, appeared in smaller structures such as royal chapels, obelisks, and symbolic representations of the Benben stone, the primordial mound of creation. The geometry of pyramids, with its alignment to cardinal points and celestial bodies, informed temple layouts and later monumental architecture, reinforcing cosmological symbolism in public and religious spaces. Throughout history, pyramids inspired the imagination and identity of Egyptian society. They were tangible reminders of the pharaoh's role as mediator between gods and humans, and served as a visual representation of state power, organization, and technological mastery. Their presence in the desert landscape linked natural geography with spiritual cosmology, creating a sacred environment that resonated across generations. Even into the Greco-Roman period, pyramids remained significant. They were studied by scholars, visited by travelers, and documented for their architectural and mathematical precision. The Great Pyramid, in particular, was revered as a marvel of human ingenuity and divine inspiration, influencing philosophical and scientific thought. Hieroglyphic inscriptions and reliefs on and near pyramids preserved historical, religious, and ceremonial knowledge, bridging generations and maintaining a sense of cultural continuity. Pyramids also affected societal organization indirectly. Their construction required centralized administration, logistical planning, specialized labor, and support infrastructure, creating models of coordinated governance. The skills, techniques, and organizational knowledge developed for pyramid construction influenced later monumental projects, including temples, obelisks, and large-scale civic works. This legacy persisted long after pyramid building ceased as a practical practice. In terms of religious symbolism, pyramids embodied the concept of resurrection and divine kingship. Their orientation to the cardinal points and alignment with stars such as Orion and Sirius reflected Egyptian cosmology and beliefs about the pharaohs' journey to the afterlife. These symbolic connections reinforced religious teachings and rituals, integrating architecture with spiritual practice in a way unmatched by other structures of the ancient world. In summary, pyramids maintained profound cultural and symbolic importance long after their functional role as tombs diminished. They influenced architecture, religious practice, societal organization, and philosophical thought. Their geometry, scale, and alignment reinforced cosmic and spiritual beliefs, while their presence in the landscape served as a continual reminder of the pharaohs' divinity and the ingenuity of ancient Egyptian civilization. Even millennia later, pyramids continue to symbolize Egypt's enduring legacy, demonstrating the interplay of religion, politics, and engineering in shaping human history. Video summary. Step back in time and uncover the fascinating history of the pyramids of Egypt. From the earliest step pyramid of Djoser to the colossal Great Pyramid of Khufu, explore how these monumental structures were built to people who worked tirelessly to create them and the incredible engineering, religious symbolism, and cultural significance behind each stone. Learn about quarrying, transport, placement, rituals, and the evolution of pyramid construction across dynasties. This journey reveals not just monuments of stone, but the story of an entire civilization striving for immortality. The pyramids of Egypt are more than just ancient structures. They are a testament to human ingenuity, faith, and perseverance. Every block tells a story of labor, belief, and vision, connecting us to a civilization that continues to inspire wonder today. If you enjoyed this journey through ancient Egypt, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to our channel for more fascinating historical explorations. Hit the bell icon so you never miss a video, and join us as we uncover the stories behind the world's most incredible wonders.